funny. How about this one? A building with over one. Good evening, folks. We're going to get started. Thank you. Could you all stand and help me salute our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a programming note and then a note about the meeting tonight. I understand from our friend working from ICAM and filming for us tonight that ICAM is not live, but the meeting will be taped and aired as soon as they can get the tape and have it up and running. I don't have that schedule, but it will be aired at a later date. So, seeing that this is the first meeting that we have after an election, it's customary that the board will reorganize, and we'll do that in just a moment. The stated purpose for this meeting is for the Board of Selectmen to make a decision on whether to have a special town meeting for purposes of the school project. Before we reorganize, I just want to say thank you to my fellow committee chairs, Carl Nyland and Rob White, for all the hard work, and for my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen for and all the other committees, for that matter, for what was certainly an interesting year. You know, this is a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. So I don't think it was a curse, however. I'm honored to serve the town. I'm doubly honored to serve as chairman, and I do it again. So it's also been my experience that when we reorganize, that the chair cedes the position while we reorganize. I don't think that's been the recent tradition, but I've asked the town manager to take over that responsibility. And the principle is that because I'm on the board, that I shouldn't chair the moment that we reorganize. So with that, I'll hand the imaginary gavel off to the town manager to act as acting chair for our reorganization.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Nomination.
I nominate Bill Kraft.
I second Mr. Kraft.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Mr. Kraft, congratulations.
Sure.
He can.
What happens? Vice chair after we get the chairs? Sure. Thanks for the computer. Yep. Our first rodeo.
Handing over the names.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to thank the members of the board for their confidence in me. Let's hope that it remains for the remainder of the evening at least. I also want to personally thank Mr. Roscher, who has led us through, as he pointed out, interesting times. He's been certainly one of our more active and clearly took charge of complicated issues and led, and I want to thank him for those efforts and his continuing work on the board. I look forward to working with all of you in this new role. The next activity is to elect a vice chair. So with your permission, I will open the nominations for Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Mutafian as Vice Chairman.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Alexson. Any other nominations at this time? Is there a motion to close the nominations?
I move we make it so.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor of closing?
Aye.
All those in favor of Mr. Mutafian as Vice Chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to serving you. Okay, I'm going to rummage around here for just a moment and see if I can find my copy of the agenda. But memory serves me that the next step are citizen inquiries. Are there any citizen inquiries? Please go to the microphone and let us know who you are and how far off Mitchell Road you are.
Kelly Jane Clobe, Mitchell Road. Not a question, just a request to remind you we're real limited on the microphones. And because this is being recorded, we'd like to make sure we hear each and every one of you. So if you don't have a microphone when you're speaking, please take one. Thank you.
Okay, point well taken. And if that microphone is not working, feel free to come up and lean over Mr. Schaaf's shoulder and...
Not on my shoulders, Before last Thursday's school committee vote, it seemed the majority of the school committee still felt the best location for a single school would be on the BILAC site, but had given up pursuit because they lacked political support to move forward. Seeing you've shown a lot of flexibility throughout the process regarding the location, got from 2 schools to 1 school, Winthrop to BILAC to now Doyon. Could you please give us the opinion of the tri-board and the new members on reconfiguration and a sense if you'd be willing to extend the same flexibility to reconsider a 2-school option?
Okay, the question has been raised, would the boards be willing to consider a 2-school option? At this point, I don't see that that is currently suggested for the remainder of the meeting. I would look to the chairman of each of the boards for guidance. Chairman of the school committee?
Yes, Carl is absent tonight, so I'm sitting in. We agree the school committee has taken several votes on school configuration. We've built an entire education plan on one school, one community elementary school to serve all of our students and all of our staff. As late as Thursday night, we also took a vote of 6-1 to build 1 school at the Doyon site. So the school committee has been pretty firm in their desire to move 1 school project forward.
Okay.
Finance Committee? Rob White is delayed and he'll be here later. He may give you a different answer, but personally I think it's reasonably related to the topic that we're discussing tonight, so I don't know how the rest of the Finance Committee feels, but I don't see any reason why we shouldn't allow a discussion on that point.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I might, I would remind those in the audience that the previous board, when the time was ripe for the debate on 1 or 2 schools, did vote 3-2 that we prefer a two-school option. That's history now. Just like my wish to be 20 again, it's not likely to happen. And I'm not in favor of going back in time. We've had a long, divisive, be it thorough process, and it's my hope that our board will lock arms with the school committee and the finance committee. Let's get a project that we can all get behind and get this thing done. It's enough debate on sites.
Any other comments from the Board of Selectmen? As chair of the meeting, I think it depends on what the discussion is later on in the evening. I think Mr. Fay has made a point that I am grudgingly agree with. So we'll see how the debate goes forward. At this point, the focus of the evening is one single school at Doyen. There may be, through discussion, issues that will be raised that may cause some additional discussion of the wisdom of that decision, certainly. But we'll wait till we get to that item. Any other citizen inquiries? Please identify yourself.
Carrie Zagarello, 137 Linebrook Road. I just wanted to clarify if this is the time that I can share a statement about the school location and configuration, or is that later in the discussion? I mean, I'm here.
Citizen inquiries are usually restricted to inquiries, which would be question in nature, unless you can construct it by way of a question. I think you'll have to wait to make your points later in the agenda. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen inquiries?
My name is Carla Villa from Masconomet Road. I'm just curious if there was ever any research done with all of the, there's so many different sites that have been discussed, but with Biolek Park or an in-town site, if there was any research done on the economic impact it would have on the rest of the town. I just think if we're investing $40 million, it's a lot of money, and if we could make sure that we make a smart financial investment. So I'm just curious. I don't know, I've heard a lot of different things about, a new school at Doyen, improving property values in the subdivisions out there, and I've heard the opposite about, it's declining the property values around Biolek Park. So I'm just wondering if there's been any research or any numbers available on that topic.
One of the members of the Finance Committee is also chairman of the School Building Committee, and I would defer to his history with this project regarding any depth research that has been done on that. Mr. Murphy?
Yes. The SBC, we've heard the whole realm of comments of that a school in your backyard is good for property value, it's bad for property value. We've heard comments that it stimulates downtown, it would stimulate downtown growth, it stimulate downtown community, but the SBC itself did not study that as a particular item because most of the information we received was, conflicting and, and it didn't come to a specific answer to any of those questions.
Okay. Any other comments on that subject? Although the committees have not studied it, I would be remiss if I didn't say a couple of words on that subject. I have looked into it at some depth, and every time you try to make something a good, strong general statement about economic development, it usually falls apart as an absolute. But there are examples, certainly, where an investment of the size that we are considering, there is little question that whether it will be positive or negative, there will be some definite economic impact on the area immediately surrounding the investment. There are those that believe that if it's managed properly, that schools in and of themselves have been proven to be economic drivers. Towns that have good schools that are recognized as such find that to be a magnet for investment, whether it's in the real estate area or other kinds of investments. An investment closer to the center of our economic and population core, I personally believe, will have more return on investment for the community at large than one that is in a more rural part of the town. I've had a chance over the last couple of weeks to talk with so-called experts in the field of city and community planning. And their belief is that the more you can layer major investments, the more likely you will have a positive economic impact over time. Spreading those investments out in the trade, they call that spray and pray. A little bit here, a little bit there, and you hope for the best. So I think the majority of those who have studied this would tend to believe that you will get more out of it if you think building your economic core and population core is a benefit to the future, if you put a school closer to that center economic and population core. Okay? Now, since I've said something on it, anyone wants to argue with me about that, I'll give you time to say that's not true, and you have facts to convince me I'm wrong.
I won't argue with you, but I will state that in a number of school building committee meetings, we had members from the Ipswich Business Roundtable and from the Ipswich Chamber of Commerce who both said when we were building a school downtown at Winthrop site that it would be a detriment to all the businesses in town.
We had, well, I don't want to...
Please identify yourself.
My name's Chubb Whitten. My name's Chubb Whitten. I'm on the SBC and on the school committee. We did have Bob McNeil as the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I think he was also referring to the lot on Green Street when he was making those statements. We did have Bob McNeil of the Chamber of Commerce had come, and he was referring to the lot on Green Street directly outside this building when he made that comment. And we all have personal opinions, and I definitely disagree with him because we need parking in this town, and that's off-site parking, and that would have created opportunities for us to have parking in events that we wouldn't normally have. Tonight being an excellent example of trying to find a parking spot.
Okay. Any other comments at this time? Yes, please identify yourself.
Sorry.
And I see they've moved a chair over, so now you can sit down. Thank you.
Hello, Kimberly Mavroides, Poplar Street. I am curious to know from any of the boards if you're in a possession of a list of other towns who have gotten to the end of the MSBA process and had the process lapse, and then what happened to those towns? Did they reapply? How long did it take them to get funding at that juncture? I think we've heard some conflicting reports that we would maybe have to wait 5 years to go through the process again. I've also heard that there have been towns that let the process lapse and then they were immediately considered the following year. So I'd like to know if there's data from other towns that are in our position now and what happened with those towns and their funding.
And again, I would defer to the chairman of the school building committee.
Yeah, there's, I guess every situation is different, so there's no set of guidelines you can provide there. I think it's also, it's a case of why that particular project may have failed, what was those specific instances inside that community. We do know that when we say about if the project isn't successful and doesn't go forward, that we do know that it did take 3 years for us to get the SOI approved the first time. So we've been using that kind of as the example that it took 3 times to go through it, that most likely would probably take 3 years again, just on an average. What makes it difficult is that the MSBA process every year is different because it's totally based on the number of schools that are submitted to them versus the amount of money they have for funding. So it's not a simple saying that you can be back in the next year or whatever, but we were just saying that, typically, it took us 3 years. It usually takes somewhere between 2 or 4 years for communities to get approved. It is kind of rare to hit it on the first time unless your need is that great. So when people are talking about the time frame, so that's where the 3-year window comes from.
Okay. An estimate, 3 to 5 years.
Agreed.
Okay. Please identify yourself.
Phil Gogan, Kingfisher Road. I'd like to ask you about the agenda. When you have an agenda, it's supposed to be advertised in advance on who's going to be on that agenda and what the product is going to be. Tonight, we are not on ICAM. There are people that are turning on Channel 8 on 9, and they're not getting this. Somehow, word should have got out, and there'd be more people here. You're going to be talking about decisions, major decisions, and it should certainly have been advertised or whatever way to let people know that it was not going to be on ICAM. Due diligence says that you should have ICAM, and if you have an agenda, that's where you should stay. I have a question that I'd like to address through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Rauscher. At the last Board of Selectmen's meeting, 3 or 4 people from the SBC, SCC, SC sat down unannounced ahead of time, 48 hours ahead of time on the open meeting law to speak about the schools. No problem there, except that it should have been on the agenda, and I think everything they said that night should be void. I could go on and on. I have another thing on this estimate that if you don't get it through this time, this vote, it's going to increase $3 to $4 million. Says who? How do you prove that? You can't just come up and say it's going to be $3 to $4 million more. We don't know that. And it's just bringing out memories of putting a deadline down so that you're scaring people. But my main reason to come here tonight is back in March 21st, at a Finance Committee meeting, the town manager came in, sat down, and said, "We have a problem." Okay. Unannounced again, wasn't on the agenda, but it must have been a serious problem because the chairman let her speak. The problem went from very serious problem to extensive, don't know how deep, I knew it was deep, we don't know what it is. It took, I think, about 8 weeks to get the minutes. The minutes still aren't there. The minutes for that meeting is there because I pushed for it. It's not right that you stick to some rules and then you don't stick to others. I want to repeat that. You have due diligence, you set up a plan at 48 hours on an open meeting law, and then someone pops in and you let them speak. It's not right. I would like to have a written or an oral on the ICAM from the town manager, through you, Mr. Chairman, of just what the situation is and was with the payroll and the benefits. We don't know if it's a $5 problem, a $50 problem, or a $500,000 problem. We don't know what the problem was.
Okay, if I may, at this point, your question is, what was the problem that was raised at that time? Is that the question you're asking?
The question is, what was the problem?
Okay.
And
lecturing us on what we should have done about it is a second issue. Right now, your question under the citizen inquiries is, what was the problem? Town manager, do you recall what the problem might have been?
We had a couple issues. One is that there were a number of discrepancies that needed to be resolved, and we have a person working on those, and I've asked my assistant to get the progress on that. And then the other one was that we had an employee who was on an extended medical leave, and we didn't have funds to replace that employee while they were on leave. That employee has opted to retire, so we no longer have that problem of trying to fill a position.
Okay, in short form, those were the problems. Any other questions at this time? I will take your comments about the timeliness of agendas and following them to heart. Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to know how deep and what kind of dollars are involved with the payroll and benefits. And the town manager says she's still working on it?
Mr. Chairman? Yes, if I can, I think it's a valid question, and I'd ask the chair to invite Mr. Gogan back on the June 5th meeting or the June 19th meeting so that the manager has time to prepare an answer. As he himself pointed out, we have an agenda and this wasn't on it. So let's have the appropriate time for the manager to get an answer, and we'll schedule it as an agenda item.
Okay, I would be guided by the wisdom of the previous chair. So we will make time for that at the next meeting.
So tonight you are going to be making decisions on the school.
The agenda specifically says discuss potential June special town meeting.
Potential.
Yep. Now, the smart money says it has something to do with the schools and perhaps something that we would be required to bring to the town to talk about the expenditure of additional funds in relationship to the school project.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I suggest that you just stick to the potential of a decision, because people are not at home watching this now. They're probably saying, what happened? And then you get a redial or disconnect files or whatever.
Again, thank you. I appreciate your direction and your recommendation. We will do our best to discuss potential, and it may ultimately resolve itself in a recommendation for a special town meeting. Thank you very much.
I'd like to add one more thing. I think the cutoff of the person that was talking about two schools was out of line. There are a lot of people that still want two schools, and to just say offhand, no, we're not going to be talking about it tonight, that's not right.
No, I said I thought there would be opportunity to bring those issues forward when we got to the agenda number 4.
I think the impact and the emphasis tonight should be on potential, not making decisions tonight.
Thank you very much. Sir, please identify yourself and...
Hello, my name is Christopher Blagg on East Street, and I just had an inquiry. If I recall correctly, the Doyon One School site was pretty much dead on arrival a year ago this month in May by, I can't remember which board, but I think all of y'all. So my question for y'all is, what has changed, unless you can excavate Doyon site and bring it downtown, because it was denied because it wasn't in a downtown area. That was the reason why because it wasn't centrally located. Now, unless Doyon is somehow centrally located, I'm not sure what we're talking about here, because the point here was that you guys were all in favor of a downtown school, and that's the reason why Doyon was out. Now suddenly Doyon is all in. It's throwing people who live anywhere downtown for a loop right now, and we don't really understand what's going on. That's my inquiry, is what has changed beyond everyone uniformly saying we need something centrally located? Doyon is obviously not centrally located, and there's going to be a lot of people downtown very upset, and I don't know how this can pass if you have half the town against it.
I am going to give the school committee an opportunity to, in short form, suggest what seems to have changed.
Mr. Chairman, could I just, no, I'll wait my turn. Thank you.
Okay, so the school committee, this process that was set up by the MSBA, the initial decision from the school committee was based on grade configuration, which we made several times, as I recall. Our priority was a one community school, a school to serve all of our elementary school students. When we started to look at which sites in town could support one school, there was a lot of strong support for a downtown school, a downtown site. That became a preference for the school committee, but our priority remained one community school. So originally, the school committee supported the Bialik site. We felt it was a site that served both downtown. It was a site that we could build a school without impacting any students currently in Winthrop or Doyon. So that became quickly our first choice. Unfortunately, that wasn't supported by the town and the other boards unanimously or significantly, really. A lot of people felt that site was better used as a green space, as a park. So then our priority, and we needed that property to be released to the school committee for use, and it wasn't. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, am I not answering the question? I don't understand. Okay.
And you're given the history, but I'm just wondering, since it's not centrally located, and I don't understand, you're still missing the, you're still not telling me, and the one school committee definitely railroaded it to us, so we weren't,
Okay, time out. That's enough. Okay.
So that was our priority site originally. It became unavailable for a variety of reasons. So then the second site that fit our preferences was the Winthrop site. It was a site we controlled. There was a lot of support for that site as a public safety site. There was overwhelming support at town meeting to put it someplace else because of concerns about parking and traffic and other concerns with that school. One school at Winthrop, okay. Yeah. So there was a lot of support from town meeting to not use the Winthrop site for that and instead use it for public safety. So the school committee then thought, our priority is to build a school, and our priority is to build one community school that can serve all of our students. We have a site that can support that at Doyon. We have a site that we can control that sits at Doyon. So the school committee now supports putting that school at Doyon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
You may not agree with the train of events that happened, but that's pretty much how it came to that point. Sir, please identify yourself.
Tim Goodrich, 18 County Street. Good evening. I just jotted down a couple of questions. I guess this is the appropriate time to put them out there. I'm not sure if you'll have time to answer them now or later. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to have an opportunity to respond to the previous question before we move on to the next question?
Let's continue with this question, and then if you have something to comment on the other one, I will come back to you for that comment, if that's all right. Okay. I'm sorry I did not see you waving your hand or being agitated enough to be recognized. So, okay, I'll be back to you in a minute. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just read these in the interest of being concise. Have the Board of Selectmen and various committee members gotten an initial sense of the level of support for a single $65 million, 775 student school at Doyon? What is the probability of getting 2/3 support at town meeting and a majority at the town-wide vote several days later? And my second question is, I think, related. If we go back to the MSBA tomorrow and ask them to reinstate the two-school 420 enrollment option at Winthrop, what would they say?
Okay, 3 questions. What are the chances of getting 2/3 at a town meeting, a majority at a secret ballot for the big school at Doyen? And what would be the consequences of going back to school building assistance and requesting a reconsideration of 420? Let's see. Anyone like to respond to that?
I'd like to respond to the previous question.
Previous question was, how did the school committee end up with the current proposal, one large school at Doyen?
Right. So I'd like to respond to the specific portion of the question about the boards previously being unanimous in favor of a downtown location. So we have truly been at this process for quite a while. What are we at, 9 months now, Kevin? 9 months, a year? Anyway, so we've had a series of meetings, and throughout those meetings, we've had a series of votes, and oftentimes the votes can be confusing, and I appreciate that. But I do want to point out that there has been no point in time, when these boards were unanimous in favor of a downtown location. There has been support, but it has not been unanimous. And throughout these discussions, members of the Finance Committee have expressed their strong desire for the Doyen location, myself being one of them. Members of the Board of Selectmen have expressed their strong desire for Doyen as well. So while I understand and appreciate the frustration of the community, I can't support the characterization that we've done in about face, and that we were unanimously in favor of a downtown school, and now we're unanimously in favor of Doyen, because we're not. We are mixed boards with mixed opinions, and we bring all of that. But this is not an about face. This is an evolution of a thought process, and it is part of the vetting process. We have looked at sites, we have vetted sites, we have had sites that have had issues, and we have had sites that have benefits. Where we are now is a continuation of that vetting process. It is not an about face, and it is not a change of opinion or stance or unanimous vote.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chairman.
So in an attempt to answer the first question of the last speaker, which is what's the probability of a large school, single school at Doyen passing town meeting and at the ballot box, I mean, I don't think anybody can really make an assessment of that. We haven't taken polls or anything. We all talk to people in the town and in the community, and depending on who our friends and relatives are, we get different answers. And it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the people who are going to show up at town meeting or who are going to show up at the ballot box. So I don't know that there's any way to predict it, but I think per Janice's comment, just for better or for worse, I think the boards, certainly the Selectmen and Finance Committee, have been divided on these issues all along. There's sometimes you get projects where there's great unanimity and support among the boards, and you think that should lead to support at town meeting, but sometimes even that doesn't work. So I don't know. I think we all just have to recognize the risk of failure here. It's certainly a reasonable probability that whatever proposal goes out on the ballot will get turned down. So.
Excuse me, I recognize one of our...
My name's Chubb Whitten. I spoke earlier. At the last town meeting, although it was a non-binding referendum, the school committee voted 7-0 for the BILEC site. I've been consistent all along that I think the BILEC site, if we have a one community school of 775 students, the BILEC site was the right site. Of course, the school committee has recognized that the Board of Selectmen did not release the BILEC site, and that was on a 2-2 vote. And so there is, I think there are great troubles for this vote going forward, my personal opinion. To locate that school anywhere but on a centrally located site such as BILEC. We have an opportunity now to locate, to solve two problems. We've tried to solve these two problems many times. I'm just trying to provide history. We also have two substandard schools that need replacing. Our educational leadership team has designed an excellent 21st century learning environment for all of our elementary school students. I'd urge the boards to look at the hurdle of getting through the next 9 months through town meeting, and perhaps I know the school committee reconsider, the select board reconsider releasing BILEC. We study BILEC. It's the place we can all meet. The two school communities, Winthrop and the Doyon communities, can meet. And at the same time, I'm sure the school committee, if that was released, would also release the Winthrop site for the needed public safety building. These are my opinions, and only mine. As you know, I've been 6 months at this, but I also look at my fellow committee members who have the strong desire for BILEC.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, further evidence that there are mixed reviews on all of this. Sir, if you would. Mr. Whitmore.
All right, thank you.
Welcome to the Board of
Thanks. Baptism by fire. For those of you who don't know, I'm William Whitmore. I'm new here. Happy to be here.
But clearly fearless and going to plunge right in, so this is good.
It's like the first tackle, right? The quarterback has to get hit right. So there's a couple things I wanted to respond to about support. I went to the school committee and I've been following them quite closely through this process. And the first time that they talked about the school, I walked up to them and I said, you need to find the option that has the most support because we need a new school. And whether you like it or not, that's what we need to roll with. And I've pushed and pushed and pushed for that. And I think that the town has tried and tried and tried to identify that. But what we've ended up doing is identifying opposition. And we've made our decisions based on that. And I don't think that's the right way to do things, but that's where we are, and that's how we've ended up here. There was strong opposition to BILEC Park. There was even stronger opposition to building the school at Winthrop. So we are where we are. And I think, as Mr. Fay said, I've been trying hard to estimate support and figure out what we have, and it's impossible. I think we all need to get comfortable with the fact that we really don't know what's going to have the most support when everything is said and done. And I think one of the key reasons why is that we've never had our backs up against the wall, really forced to make the decision. People have thought about, well, if this doesn't work, then maybe there's that. Or if I don't vote for A, maybe B will happen. We've never gotten to the point where it's, here's the option, or it's status quo. Pick. We haven't gotten there yet, and I believe that there's a difference between what people want and what they're willing to support, and we've never gotten to that second point yet. So I think until we get there, we're not going to know what has the most support, and I think the only way to get there is for us to have a vote on this.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I was... Re-identify yourself. Go ahead.
Kevin Sinowski. The partnership with the MSBA and deadlines seem to be a driving force, and probably rightfully so, in your decision-making. Just to understand a little bit more, who would be the final decision-maker if a partnership, full partnership, was made with construction on hiring contractors, and how do you plan on making that favorable for local contractors and businesses?
Okay, so when it comes to the bidding process for the contractors, the state has two processes. One is called Chapter 149, which is Design Bid Build, 149A, which is CM at Risk. In both of those scenarios, the contractors would be pre-qualified by the project manager, and if there any contractor can submit submit to be qualified. If they're qualified, then they would be allowed, and I shouldn't say allowed, but they would be part of the group of contractors who would bid the project. So we were going to, like any state project or any project that has public funding involved, would be following state bid laws, and within those state bid laws, everyone's on equal footing.
So a state assigned project manager would make those decisions?
Well, our OPM is here. It would be between the OPM and the school building committee would make those decisions on the pre-bid list, and then it comes down to, in the bidding, it's the lowest bidder wins.
And however we get to that point, hopefully we'll do it legally. Question.
Hi, I'm Carrie Zagarella again, 137 Linebrook Road. I do have a question. At the last town meeting, there was a pulse, a dipstick taken on a site preference, and it was overwhelmingly voted, I guess, it was non-binding that Doyon was the site. That vote or that opinion poll was not known to anyone that it would be taken at town meeting. I think that needs to be announced beforehand so people know that dipstick, that non-binding opinion poll is being taken. Also, just tonight I have a whole passionate statement I'm going to skip, but we can do that some other time. But I have a question.
Don't throw it away. You may get a chance later. Go ahead.
This question will sum it all up. Is that, I'm hearing a lot of well, how will we ever know what the public thinks and what are we possibly going to do? A year ago, or perhaps more, I was here at a FinCom meeting, and there was a chart that was put up, a graph that described in dollars what it would cost to build a single new school at Winthrop and a combined school at Doyon and other configurations. That has never been published in the Chronicle. It has never been given at town meeting. I think we will get a real good clue about where people's allegiances lie when they get to understand what their tax increase will be. Instead of picking out parking spaces and colors for the school, people need to know how much each configuration is going to cost them, and I wonder why that hasn't happened, and I've only seen that table once.
If I could, on that, I would strongly beg to differ because that's been discussed multiple times over the process. The latest estimates for the three sites, being Bialik, Doyon, and Winthrop, were in part of the town meeting presentation that was done last week ago, Tuesday night. So as of even Tuesday night, we had talked about those numbers. In this FinCom...
Not a single school. That wasn't spoken about. Not a single school. And was it on...
It was a single school on those three sites. And so then...
I'm talking separate schools.
Okay, well...
Like in the original SOI.
So in the FinCom report that was done back in January for the special town meeting, all of the various scenarios between renovation of the buildings to keeping two schools to building one school, all those scenarios was in the FinCom's report back in January.
In the FinCom's report.
In the FinCom report. Mm-hmm. It has been discussed at multiple tri-boards, and so therefore it's part of the public record, and that information is all on the town website, under the school building committee's website, and it's been discussed several times at school building committee meetings also, so it is part of the public record. I do know that it has been in the Chronicle and the online paper at times.
Online paper, yes.
I'm not going to defend the Chronicle or anything, but I have read it in there at times, so.
I guess my point is, and that's part of my passionate plea, is that's great that all these venues were used, but a lifelong resident of Ipswich asked me today, was there ever a plan for one single school? Yeah, that was the original SOI. Yeah, there was a plan. So it's certainly, yes, it has been published many times, but if people are very confused and they don't know, we need to give that information to them more, not less, not buried on an online site where people might not see it. And I know that it's been out there, but a lot of people don't know the numbers. That's my point.
The question is, has that information been hidden? No, it has been published. Has it been distributed broadly enough? That's a question. I see the Fourth Estate is about here to defend itself, so here we go.
Dan McAlpin, I'm speaking as editor of the Ipswich Chronicle at this point. The cost breakdowns for all the options were in the paper. I wrote the articles. We had charts. I just wanted to be clear about that and that be part of the record. That was, I can see why people don't know, because that was a year and a half, 2 years ago now. So, that's how long this debate has been going on.
Okay.
So,
That's what we made the decision to do.
point out that it has been in the paper.
So the point is, if you rummage around in the archives, it's probably there. I think the cautionary note is that it probably is worth redistributing that information in fairness to people who will be asked to invest in it over time.
Mr. Chairman?
I heard the voice.
I'd like to speak to the town meeting issue. I think all of us as board members have heard over the last week from many, many citizens who didn't feel like the vote was fair, and that had they known that there was going to be a poll at town meeting, they would have been able to get there. So, and I've read every one of the letters, and I can understand, again, the frustration, but I think maybe this is a wonderful opportunity for us as boards to help re-educate the public on town meeting. Town meeting publishes a warrant, and we have articles, but the only way to know what is going to happen at town meeting is to go to town meeting, because every single citizen has a right to amend one of those articles in any way they see fit. In any way they see fit, as long as it remains within the four corners of the article. So there is no way for us to be able to tell everyone in advance what we will vote on at town meeting, because it is the body of town meeting that decides what we vote on. So this has happened on many, 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 many articles where they've been amended. There have been motions. There have been motions upon motions. That is the nature of the meeting. It is the nature of the democratic process within town meeting. And the fact that it happened in the school issue has probably brought it to the light, but it happens almost every town meeting. There is an article that is amended. So while I understand people feel slighted that they didn't know that we were going to vote on a question in the way we voted, neither did we. So if you want to vote on something at town meeting, you have to come to town meeting. And if you want to amend a motion, if you want to vote differently than an article, you have to come to town meeting, make that motion, garner your support, and hold the vote.
Mr. Chairman.
I wanted to supplement the response to the citizen who asked about the turnaround.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, could we just ask Mr. Howard to identify himself like he does somebody else?
My apologies. I'm Richard Howard. I'm on the school building committee. I live at Lakeland Snake. The citizen asked about a turnaround in the boards, and I agree with the statement that the other boards had mixed feelings, but the only board that gets to decide the site, the school committee, did decide that the school would be in a in-town walkable site, and they chose the Winthrop School. I heard Ms. Player explain the reason, and the reason that the school committee decided that changed the mind about the Winthrop School is that they were told, I believe, I wasn't not at the tri-board meeting where this was discussed, but that the school building committee advised them that Winthrop School was no longer feasible. I was at a series of meetings where the architects presented very impressive plans for fitting a beautiful school in at Winthrop School, and the only thing that was left on the table at the last meeting I attended was we were short some parking spaces. Then we came up with a proposal for Green Street. I was disappointed that the school committee didn't send the question back to the school building committee to consider other options rather than the politically unfeasible Green Street position, a solution to the parking problem. The other item that Ms. Player mentioned as a rationale for not sticking with Winthrop was that it was an appropriate site for a public safety building. I don't agree that that was an appropriate consideration, and I don't know how much of a role it played. But the considerations for where the school should be exclusively on what's best for the kids. And the school committee had previously decided that in town and walkable is best for the kids, and therefore I disagree with.
Please identify yourself.
I'm Sarah Allen. I live on East Street. I promised to ask a quick question, I hope. I read the Ipswich Chronicle. I think I remember reading that article almost a year and a half ago. I read the warrant. I think that my question is related to strategic planning. Mr. Whitmore, I feel like you often talked about that. I pay $500 a month to put my kids on the bus, which is fine. I do that. But if has the long-term, like every year after, I know you're going to waive the bus fees, but year after year of paying for the entire town to be bused that way? Is there a plan that looks out very, very far? And forgive me, it's hard with 3 small children to get to these meetings, and God bless you all for the hours that you all have put in. But that's my question, like things like that, like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because we say this site's cheaper, that site's more expensive, and I do remember the article. Do you know what I'm saying? Has things like busing. That's a long-term thing.
Well, in the study of
If I go now, sorry.
In the study of the downtown, the Winthrop site, Violet, or the Doyon site, it was determined that 10 buses were needed for any of the 3 sites. The 10 buses to Doyon are required because of the number of students living 2 miles away to the building. The number of buses were increased for the downtown site to give an incentive, and to remove the bus fee, to give an incentive to parents to stop driving to the site to lower traffic. So in the model that was used for all the 3 sites, 10 buses were in the model. So regardless of the site, the busing cost for the schools would be the same.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, I move we move on to agenda item number 4 on our agenda, discuss potential June special town meeting.
I second that.
Under discussion, just so I'm clear, why I think the motion is important. I think the motion is important because we have a posted meeting to discuss a potential town meeting. All of these issues, I believe, are important. I'd love to be involved in a discussion of that. But as several of the speakers, pro and con, this or that, have pointed out, we should stick to what we posted. I mean, some people seem surprised by the action at town meeting, and I think in this case, it's clear that we've gone very far afield under citizens' queries. We have not moved on to the agenda, and it's our responsibility as a board to stick within the 4 corners of the meeting we warn. I would hazard a guess that if this was going to be a full-blown discussion, and again, I fully support that idea, we would need to have it in a larger room, obviously. But tonight's not that night. We have a proposal in front of us. The school committee has made a decision, and we're here just to simply ask the question, given that proposal, whether a special town meeting is in order or whether there's another way to pay for the incremental costs they need for their proposal, for which we could reimburse them in the fall. There's really, it's basically, that's what we warned. That is exactly what we warned and nothing more. So that's the reason for the motion. I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion?
Can we clarify? So we're basically if we're moving on to, I thought we were already on number 4, frankly, because it's been going on. So
it began to sound that way.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, so if we vote to move on to number 4, are we going to take public discussion or public comments on this, or are we moving on and then being done with public comments?
Would be my ruling as chair is that this is an extraordinarily important decision for the town. And I think one of the reasons that I did not call citizen inquiries to a halt, most of the questions were not completely unrelated. They were contextual. I think they're going to have a lot to do with where we go with a proposal for town meeting. We've just had a town meeting. We're about to ask the voters to get themselves organized and get out to another one. And I think to not make this a discussion, which is really a briefing on a very narrow topic, to have it discussed in some detail so that people know that, one, boards are not all of a piece on this topic with regard to what we're trying to do, some of the history, just to refresh our minds and memories. It is not completely inappropriate. On the other hand, I do think the topic has kind of morphed into a discussion of the potential June special town meeting, because the substance of that proposal really has been what we've been talking about. So all those in favor of moving on from citizen inquiries and taking up item number 4? Aye. Those in favor? Anybody opposed?
So, Mr. Chairman, since this is a tri-board, are you inviting comments from the other boards as far as the agenda, or?
If I see a hand raised, I definitely will.
Okay, but we're not voting.
I will actually, I'll be guided by the two boards. I believe that what do you think?
I think you're the chairman. I don't think you need a vote.
I don't think I do either. But I don't want to just have an exercise of raw power up here. I would like to have some generally congenial discussion about what I think is a very complicated issue that's coming up. But I do think we can move on, as Mr. Rosher has pointed out, to the substance of that, which will help us narrow the discussion.
For the record, I'm no longer chairman because Rob is here, so.
Okay, and I see him hiding and cowering over here on the corner. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I am going to exercise my prerogative, and we are now moving on to item number 4, which is a discussion of a potential June special town meeting. I would like someone to give us 2 minutes of background on why this is important and why this is being discussed at this time. I've been at other meetings where it has been discussed. The rationale has been primarily provided by the school building committee. And I would look to you, I guess, to help us in a short form understand why this is needed, why now, and what will be accomplished if we go forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed last week at the Selectmen's meeting, is based on the relocation of the project to Doyon. Prior to town meeting, the SBC instructed the architect to stop the process of schematic design for the school at the Winthrop site, pending what was going to occur at town meeting and potentially what could be the aftermath of that. And of that, which we've discussed before, and I think everybody received today, there was 4 alternates created of what the schedule could be. Now that we're looking at a different site, there is, in discussion with the MSBA, we have to resubmit the PSR, which is the preferred schematic report, which was submitted back in January for the Winthrop site. So we need to resubmit that. We need to do a survey of the Doyon site and do a phase 2 environmental study of the Doyon site. And then also we need to obviously take the wonderful building, educational building that the architect has designed for us and now place it on top of the Doyon site. So there's additional services required for all 3 of those. And those would be services all above and beyond what we had for our original bond. What makes the SBC looking to have this done in June, that we solve it through either the town meeting or another way of borrowing money and replacing it at a later date, is that we are up against some critical dates when it comes to the MSBA process. The first of it being is that we really need to have the final decision on if we're going forward with the project in the fall to keep a schedule so that we're starting construction in 2018 if we will allow the scheduled to slip, that we had a town meeting during the winter months or into early spring, that would cause us to be off schedule, that we would lose a year of construction, a construction window of starting construction, and that's where the increase, the estimated escalation cost of the $3 to $4 million comes from. And that's based on, the standard right now in our construction industry, that year-to-year costs are rising between 3% and 5%. So that tonight we're looking to, fund that next piece. Someone's been handed out of what the motions could be, but just to give an idea of the numbers, when we stopped the architect in the design process, we had approximately $147,000 left underneath the bond. We have to resubmit that PSR. Between the PSR, the survey, and the environmental study, the cost is roughly about $130,000. So the goal would be to repurpose that $143,000 or a portion of it to pay for that PSR, so that could be submitted by the end of June. And the architect is asking for approximately, I think it was $190,000 to continue the schematic design, and being safe here, the SBC has added about a 25% contingency to protect ourselves for any other things that may come up between now and the fall.
So for a grand total of?
The request is for $250,000.
Okay, as I look to the three boards, is everyone clear what is being discussed and the reason and the timing? Please just let us know who you are for those who are listening to the tape that may or not be.
Michael Shaw, Finance Committee. Excuse me. What I understand is we have $145K remaining.
Yes.
So do we have rounding these numbers here, a $400,000 requirement here of expenses? So we have 150 plus 250 to comprise the 400,000? Is that, I don't get where the 145 is going.
Oh, okay, yeah, so where the 140 is going, where the majority of the money is to resubmit the preferred schematic report that we had already submitted back in January of 2017. So we have to redo that study. And we're being told that the cost is approximately $135,000. So that's what that money is, where that money is being used to finish the contract. So what it is the add is approximately $200,000 to redo schematic design for the project on the Doyon site.
So we reallocate the 145, and then we need additional 250 to adapt the project to the Doyon site.
We need less than 200, but 250 is the safety factor, yes.
Contingency.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Question for, I think it would be the school committee. Germane to the debate of whether we have a special town meeting is the question of whether we could, the school committee has access to dollars that could then be reimbursed at a fall town meeting, our regular special town meeting. The benefit of that would be that we wouldn't have to convene a June town meeting, which is certainly going to suffer from a potential attendance problem, and it's also unusual for us to do so, and if we could be efficient in our meetings and give the process another alternative to fund it, what would you do, in other words, if we didn't have a special town meeting in June?
I think at Barry Hoffing School Committee, I think you're referring to choice funds, would be our initial reaction or response to that question. The answer is yes. We have access to choice funds. We're not, at this point this evening, prepared to commit to that, because obviously there's some key players. The superintendent and our director of business and operations, or finance and operations, are not here. The other thing that we are concerned about is that by doing that, it would take the public out of the process.
by putting the $250,000 forward from the choice fund, there's no longer any need for town meeting. Public would be blocked from that process, the vote that would be coming up in June.
Fair enough.
So the answer is yes, there are funds available, it's just we're not at a point right now that we can commit to that. We would also be very concerned, just if I may finish, we're also very concerned about the reimbursement. If we were to commit $250,000 from choice, we'd need a guarantee that from some fund, whether it be town meeting in the fall, whether it be free cash, whatever, that fund would be replenished.
Thank you for your answer. May I ask just a simple follow-up to that question? And it's related. So if we were to have a June town meeting and the article fails, has the school committee, I guess you haven't really had a chance to discuss it and vote on it, so it's probably unfair to ask that question. So I withdraw the question. Thank you. Thank you for your previous answer.
We understand the question.
It will be the subject of conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, you sort of ricocheted off what I think is one of the more important issues here. Many of the people that have, I must say you galvanized a whole group of people as a result of your decision-making last week. I have not received this many phone calls in this short a period of time or emails on a topic for a long time. And even tonight, people are saying, well, how did we get to this point and how was that decision made? If we are going to suggest $250,000 to be spent for this large school at Doyen and not give the townspeople a chance to be heard in town meeting, as I understand your comment, we would really have eliminated them from the process, and it would be seen by some as a sort of arbitrary decision on the part of the school committee just to push it through.
That's why I mentioned it.
I have two questions. My first question, and I'm sorry if I missed it in the write-up, the $250,000, does that include the MSBA reimbursement? Are we actually giving, will we get $125,000 of that back?
That's a very good point, Willie. The way the MSBA reimbursement works is that they are, as part of this phase of the project, the feasibility/schematic design phase, they are reimbursing us 45.74% of the original $945,000 of the bond. If we spend any monies above that number, the MSBA does not reimburse.
Okay, so this is additional.
This would be 100% additional.
Okay, so it's $250,000. The next question that I have that I want to go back to, that I really think we need an answer to tonight, and maybe is back to the idea of if we send this to town meeting and it doesn't pass. And I don't think I need to know what the school committee would necessarily do, but what is the process? What happens? My understanding is as of right now, we have a single school at Winthrop, and that's what the plan that we have submitted. So if we have it, right now it's at Winthrop, correct?
The
plan that MSBA has is a single school at Winthrop.
But the MSBA has been notified by our project manager that we were discussing moving it to another site, and the MSBA is waiting very patiently to hear what our decision is.
But we have everything submitted for a combined school at Winthrop. It's there, sitting there. So my understanding is, if we send this to town meeting in June and we don't get 2/3 vote in support, we have a combined school at Winthrop. That's what's there, unless if the school committee decides to change their mind. And we need to have that issue. It needs to be clear. We can't go to the meeting in June and have people not know what they're voting on. Well, we shouldn't be making a decision tonight without knowing what we're doing.
I guess the question is there a plan B and
we only have plans 1 through 4 here, so...
No, I mean, is there an answer, though? At this point, if we don't get the $250,000 at a special town meeting, then the previous proposal stands, is that correct?
Well, it depends what we do. I mean, one of our goals was if we were going forward with the Doyon site, the idea is that we would be releasing the architect to do the PSR now, before town meeting, if that's what, going through to keep this first schedule, so that if we're, so the idea is if we had submitted a different, if we don't submit a site in a revised PSR, then Winthrop stays a site before town meeting. If we choose to go forward with the PSR and submit that at the end of the, well, it would be the middle of June, at the end of June, if we were to submit that, it would change the site. So if we had a meeting if we had town meeting on June 19th, which is before this PSR would be submitted, MSBA would still think the site is the Winthrop site. I know it's very confusing, but
I'm not confused. I understand exactly what you're saying.
I've been confused for 19 months, so, but yeah, so it's, what it is right now, Winthrop is the site, it's on hold, they're waiting for a response from us if we're changing the site. The way we change the site is by informing them that we're going to submit the PSR for the Doyon site.
And suppose we don't give you the money to follow up on that?
Well, we're not seeing...
As taxpayers, I'm talking about.
Well, then, obviously, the plan B would be if we keep the Winthrop site, if we fund the Doyon site through a different mechanism, or we close up the process and stop.
So the fallback position is not clear at this point?
The fallback position would be the one school at Winthrop, finding another means to fund the Doyon site, or stopping the process. So that would be those three options are Plan B.
Okay, and not to get too deeply into this, if I may, follow-up question. To go to the town meeting says, no, we don't believe spending the additional $250,000 is a good idea, and then you find another way to do that? Is that what I'm hearing is one of the possibilities?
I'm not advocating for, I'm just trying to say that if there was a strong feeling to continue on the Doyon site, then you would have to find other ways for the funding, obviously.
Strong feeling after it had not been voted at town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Jeff Anderson from the SBC. Kevin, whether we went forward with Doyon following the vote from the school committee last week, or we stayed with Winthrop, there was going to be a request for additional funds because we had delayed the architect beyond the number of times it was allowed. Well, that's not true. If we delay them, they could have asked for more funds. We delayed them 3 times. They did not ask for more funds. On this 4th time, they said, we're going to ask for more funds, and that was within the contract, and that's very normal in the design process because it's very expensive and very complicated for design firms to start and stop projects. So that's important to understand. It wasn't just because we moved to Doyon. Regardless, there were additional funds that would have needed to have gone through.
At the same level?
Well, not at the same level. $25,000 was the additional fee if we stayed at Winthrop. In terms of, I think, the question about what happens going forward, there was a question earlier asked, can we just change back to 2 schools? The MSBA was open to changing site. They said that they would be very strongly not okay with us changing models. So I think that's important to bring up right now when we're talking about what happens when you go forward with this process. If the town doesn't approve funds via the STM or special town meeting or whatever to move forward with schematic design for the Doyon site or whatever, we're left in a bit of a pickle there because we can't go back to them and change models. Kevin, I think that's pretty clearly what they said, right?
That's correct. Once we submitted the educational program that the educational team put together between the administrators and the teachers, we committed ourselves to that plan, and at this stage, being at schematic design, we would be unable to revise the model back to 2 schools. If we wanted to go that direction, then this process would stop, and we would have to reapply underneath the SOI to do that.
Mr. Chairman, someone has been very patient sitting here. Please identify yourself and...
Thank you. Jennifer Donahue, High Street. I want a point of clarification, so I have a few statements to ask you about, but then also to tack on to what Willie was asking about a possible Plan B. So it's my understanding that when The $1 million was voted on in October of 2014, and we are on the hook for 55% of that, is that correct? So 550?
It's 525,000.
525,000. So of that, we have 145,000 left, is that correct?
Yes.
And then in addition, my understanding is because of the non-binding vote and then the subsequent school committee vote to move the one school decision to Doyon, in order for the architects to put down the, you asked them to put down the pencil because of the citizens petition. In order for them to pick it back up to make a schematic design at Doyon, we now need $250,000.
We need $250,000 because we're making a very significant change to the project by moving sites.
Right.
Not by delaying them.
Plus the additional, the 145 plus $250,000. So that's outside of the bond, and that's outside of the $1 million that we voted on in 2014.
The 135 is within the bond.
Okay. And then, in order for them to pick up the pencils and continue a plan at the Winthrop site, it's $25,000.
That's correct.
That's correct. And I understand a difference, there's a site difference and then there's a schematic design difference, but when you pick up the pencil for $25,000 for the Winthrop site, because they've already gone through the schematic design, does the architect, are they able to give us a financial answer to what would be, what it would cost to scale down the building? Because tonight, what the Board of Selectmen is going to vote on is an article for a special town meeting. And if we had answers to Willie's point about exactly what we're voting on, if $250,000 is not what the town agrees on, what would it cost, because we already have the plans at Winthrop, to scale down the building?
We don't have plans to scale down the building.
But can the architect scale down the building, reduce the size? Because they've already gone through the the schematic design. I'm asking a question for Plan B.
Scale down to what size?
To 490. Or 420, that question was asked earlier.
The process would not allow us to do that. We submitted the 775 building to the MSBA. That is the building that we're supposed to be designing and building. We don't have the option of scaling it down to 490 or to a 490 building or 420 building underneath this process. If we would choose to do that, as I just said, we would have to resubmit the SOI and start the process over.
I think for the purposes of having an involved public to know whether or not they want to appropriate $250,000 to go through another schematic design or keep a $25,000 plan and scale down, I think you should ask the question and change the article that you're voting on. And I would like to hear from some of the new board members as to what they think of scaling down the Winthrop site and going with a two-school plan.
Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give my colleagues the chance to respond. I would like to recognize one of the speakers from the audience. If you would tell us who you are and speak, and Mr. Schaaf next.
I'm just going to clarify with something for her.
1 second.
Okay.
My name's Eleanor Norris, and I have a question about binding or non-binding. The more recent meeting, the poll was taken, and it was presented as a non-binding question in the ballot. Was that correct? Was it non-binding? The vote or the poll went to favor Doyon, and this seems to have been assumed as though it was a binding answer. It is just assumed that that's the answer now and is giving you impetus to go to Doyon as if that was the vote. The original presentation that you made so well at town meeting for the single school to, at Winthrop received great approval, and it was very, very enthusiastically received. As far as I know, as a town meeting member, that was a binding vote, and yet you changed what you were going to do without coming back to town meeting and getting the approval. And that is my fundamental problem with this. You never asked the town meeting to change that original design from a 38,000 or whatever it was to now it became a 68. That's one of my problems. The other side of it was the reason for taking down Doyon was because the state did not fund reconstruction or, renovation and so forth. Well, there was an article in the Salem News last week, I don't know if you saw it, but it had to do with some of the state's new interest in funding what they call deferred maintenance, buildings that have not had any updating or maintenance of any, idea for 40, 50 years. And rather than tearing them down and building a really expensive new school, they want to start funding maintenance, and I would guess that might color how we look at Doyon. I may be wrong, but I think it should be considered. So even if we lose something in the process at the beginning, I don't think Doyon is as hopeless as you would like to make it out to be.
Okay.
And I do think the state is interested in not just funding new buildings anymore.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Shaw?
They're not going to clap as much for me. Touche. This is just a clarification, really. Several folks have mentioned reasonably that they don't understand the process, and it is complicated. So the previous resident mentioned a matter that I thought was not clearly understood nor presented. With the process with the school building authority, it's not just the building, it's also the educational programming. So the school committee and the school building committee have submitted not just a design for one building at the Winthrop site, they've also submitted an educational plan for one building. And it's that educational plan that the state is really rigid about. We submitted a plan for one building, the state has accepted it, so whereas they're willing to apparently go to a different site, they're not willing to change the educational plan on which a good deal of effort was expended. And that's what's driving, we either do one site for one school, or we have to go back to the beginning because we have submitted that plan that they've accepted.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on the potential holding of a special town meeting. Kevin, can you speak a little bit to the reimbursable amount of money and where that's at risk and when it's at risk? In other words, one could think of we hear a lot about investments and they're important. Can you speak a little bit to the $900,000 that we've already sort of committed to spend and where we are risk-wise with that money?
Well, there is, when it comes to the reimbursement, there is no risk. The process is much different than it was when the high school, middle school project was done. With the high school, middle school project, the MSBA sends a check to the town every year to pay their portion of the principal and interest for the project. And they will continue to do so until FY20, when the last year that when the bond is paid off. The MSBA works on a different thing. It's a pay-as-you-go program where when we, as an SBC, approve the invoices from the OPM and the architect, the town submits those to the MSBA. And within 30 days or so, the MSBA refunds or reimburses the town their 45.74% of those invoices. So we're receiving the money as we go. We have a contract with them through this phase, so that they have committed by contract to pay us through this portion of the project.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond to Ms. Norris. We did discuss that potential of having retaining the small school at Winthrop site and pursuing the not renovations, but repair costs for Doyen. And they would deduct those costs from our reimbursement for a new school. So we did ask that question, and we can't pursue that particular program.
Also, if I could just add, because the question was made about renovating buildings versus new, there's no question, since some very large projects that occurred, school projects that occurred 10 years ago, the MSBA has changed its strategy about just going to a brand new building. During this process, we had to do studies of both of the buildings. Their existing, not only the existing structure itself and mechanical systems inside the building, we had to go through them and explain, how they support educational needs. And if the buildings had supported educational needs, then a renovation or repair of the buildings would have been an option. The MSBA, through what we submitted, 16, 18 months ago, or 2 years ago, whatever it's been now, they agreed that the buildings as constituted now, both buildings, the classrooms are not large enough, the gym's not large enough, the cafeteria is not large enough, there are no sped spaces, music is being taught music is not in a classroom, it's up on the stage, there's art rooms missing, the list goes on, that there is educational spaces needed in both buildings. So just a pure renovation of the buildings weren't an option. So the next level is a renovation addition of the existing structure. We studied that for both buildings and we studied that for all three options at Winthrop, the 420, 490, and 775, and we studied the 775 option at Doyon. The cost to renovate the building and build the addition was within 5-6% of building a new building. So we submitted all those numbers to the MSBA, and in those, with our recommendation as a community, based on the numbers and MSBA's, recommendation, they approved the idea of constructing a new building, and they accepted the idea of the 775 building. So we did go through a process where we did study the buildings, tried to maintain the buildings. The problem that we have is, to renovate a building that's being occupied, you have to have spaces to put the students in. And, we just don't have that available because of the size of the buildings are undersized for the student population. So those swing spaces needed to renovate an existing building weren't available. The idea of building the addition and then renovating it, we did look at it, and like I said, it ended up where the cost was almost identical within, 5-6% of what the new construction costs were. So we did go through a very thorough process where we did go through the various scenarios before we came to, building a new building.
I want to say something about that because I've been in this process all along from the beginning. The original genesis of this project was to replace an elementary school, which was Winthrop, which was in the worst case situation. And by replacing that school with a new school, would relieve the overcrowding at Doyen. That was the genesis of this. Now, you might recall there was a survey that I'm thinking the schools did. I wasn't involved in that. I don't know who was involved in that, but it was a survey that went out. And there was a lot of feedback from people in this community that felt that every kid should get a new school. Okay? Every kid should get a new school or have an experience at that new school. And that is the real, I think, genesis of a single school. The problem is there were many people that felt the school should also be in the center of town. I was one of them. That's the genesis for trying to keep it in the center of town. So if it's oversized, it's because the response from the community was, we all want a piece of that school. If it is in the center of town, it is because for a number of reasons, including the sentiments of people that came to these meetings and expressed that, and because of the sense of a community development plan that talks about a school remaining in the center of town. That's why we are where we are. Because people said we all want our kids, or we all want some access to that new school. And we settled for a large school, and now we don't have a place in the center of town to build it. And that is essentially how we got here. So trying to solve one problem created, a sense of people feeling they weren't getting their share of that new school. So I just want everybody to understand that I think we've all been jumping through hoops to give everybody what they want. And in the process, it sounds to me here, nobody's gotten what they wanted. So I just really ask people to understand we're not here trying to create trouble. We're trying to give everybody what they said they wanted.
Okay, and if I may, we have a number of people who are lined up. There also is a question raised to give new members of the Board of Selectmen and School Committee a brief opportunity to speak to this subject if they would like to do that. So I'm going to call on each one of you in turn.
Great.
Linda Alexson.
Thank you, Linda Alexson. My first comment was exactly what the town manager mentioned. I remember the beginning of this whole process is just that we were going to renovate the Winthrop School. And I obviously wasn't on any of these boards or committees at the time, but I remember hearing about, if the Winthrop students were going to get a brand new school, well then so should the Doyon students, and everybody should have the same state-of-the-art buildings. And it morphed, from what I could see, it morphed into this new one school, which I do support. I have grandchildren at the Winthrop School, and I do support one school for all of the children, but not at the Winthrop site nor at the Bialik site. And I won't go into all of my reasons for that. I think most of us share some of those concerns, but I feel that a new school is going to bring a new educational plan for our kids too, and I'm very excited about that. And I feel that the Doyon property is not on Outer Linebrook. It's not 10 miles out of town. I think it's within a reasonable distance to town. So that is where I stand with this. So I hope that this project can move forward.
Please identify yourself.
Sure. Nicole Zito, Kimball Ave, new school committee member. So I had spoke last week about the basis for my vote, and I think in order to make this decision about school site, that we have to ask ourselves 3 questions. Primarily, what is best for kids? What is most likely to pass at the town meeting, and what is, as school committee members and members on all of the boards, our fiscal responsibility to the town. So I voted last week to change the site to Doyon because I think it's the most likely to pass the town meeting for all of the reasons that have been raised again this evening. I also think, in terms of fiscal responsibility, we're on the hook for over $500,000, so I believe at this juncture, we should pay $2,000 and see what the town thinks about building that site, that school on the Doyon site. However, in terms of what I think is good for kids, I maintain that a state-of-the-art facility is what's best for kids. However, in my countless conversations with friends and community members, I think we always come back to, but wouldn't it be really nice to have our two small community schools? So that remains in my heart, my first choice, but I would support and continue to support a school on the Doyon site, a single school. In order for, I believe, citizens to make that decision, I think that they need to have accurate information about what happens when that town meeting fails. So I do appreciate, Willie, your comments about, do we return to the Winthrop site, and where does that $25,000 come from, and whose decision is it? So I would work behind, with my school committee members to put in place that Plan B should it fail at town meeting.
Thank you very much. Yes.
They're also new to school committee.
Sometimes you have to be a little closer.
Yeah, just get right in there and...
Mike, okay. So I voted for Doyon. When it first came up 3 years ago, I did vote, and my kids were Doyon kids, although my kids are in high school, I have no dog in this fight. But I voted for a single school at Winthrop. I thought, I think that's great. I think the kids could all get something. All the kids in town would get a new school. I'm fine with the Winthrop site. That's fine with me. But what seems to have happened, particularly in the last few months, is it's become apparent that there is concern about whether or not the Winthrop site is feasible. So then, and I said all of this pretty much to the school committee, then we come down to, well, how about Bialik? Bialik would be a great site, but it looks like we can't get Bialik released. So what's left? What's left is Doyon. I think, and I could be completely wrong here, but I know we're talking about trying to get a 2/3 vote. I think that if you said to the town, the kids who go to Winthrop are going to get a brand new school, the kids at Doyon are going to get a refurbished school, I think you'd have a difficult time getting a 2/3 majority. I could be completely wrong. But I think you have a better shot at it if all the kids get a new school. I don't know, that's my thought. So anyway, I would support the new school at Doyon.
All right, thank you. So, I am a fan of building the school at Bialik Park. To me, it seemed like the best compromise that we had. I wrote an article, I looked it up, I think it was August 6th of last year, and I wrote the article and I encouraged the Board of Selectmen to release the park so that we could have a vote at a town meeting. That did not happen. I think the vote that the Board of Selectmen took at that time was premature, and I think it created a lot of confusion. The proof in the pudding on the confusion they created is we stopped working on Bialik Park whenever they voted not to release it, and then we just voted on Bialik 2 weeks ago. So their efforts, to me, it just built distrust and confusion, and I don't think it was helpful. I hope now, being on the Board of Selectmen, that we won't head down that route and make decisions in that manner. That being said, with regards to Ms. Norris's comment about binding versus non-binding, there's been a lot of discussion on that. I would note that we did have a vote at the special town in January, right when we talked about Pony Express, and we voted to endorse, the town overwhelmingly voted to endorse the idea of combining the schools. Now, there was no clarity on where exactly it was going to be, but there was a lot of support for a combined school at that time. As far as a non-binding vote, I basically sat back and counted votes, and I know they're non-binding, but
if you took all the opposition and the people who support protecting Biolek Park, if you took those people at that town meeting, and if you brought them back again, you would need everyone who supported building the school at Biolek Park plus another 450 people to get a 2/3 vote. You would need to flood, the whole thing would be like record attendance, and you couldn't have anyone else show up in favor of protecting Biolek. To me, there's just too much opposition to building the school there, and I think it's too risky to propose. So it's non-binding, but to me, the opposition was very strong and a strong indicator of what the situation was. As far as, I have a whole bunch of notes, I'll try to be quick. As far as the timeline and people talking about, there's been a lot about just people talking about waiting and why do we need to make a decision now. We need to make a decision now because we need a timeline, because otherwise we wouldn't make the decision. We're basically just going in circles. The first meeting that I had on my calendar for the school committee to make a decision on grade configuration was March of last year. And that's when they had a discussion on 1 versus 2 schools. And we're back here right now, 15 months later, talking about 1 versus 2 schools. So the reason the MSBA has a deadline is so that it forces a community to make a decision. And I believe that we do need to make that decision. I would like to see a town vote on this. It's not about the money that we spent or the money that's going to cost, but it's about finding out what people want and what they don't want. And if people are opposed to combining the schools and moving it out to Doyon, great, that's fine. Just show up and vote that way. And if we can't get 2/3 vote next month, then we don't get 2/3 vote. And we do something else, and that's fine. But I think we're to the point now where we have a combined school at Doyon and we're going to roll forward with that, I hope. And that's an alternative that's there. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And then we'll regroup and we'll move on. But that's basically where I'm at.
Well said, Willie.
Tammy Howe, Finance Committee. I guess my question is back to the selectmen and to the school board is, I keep hearing it sounds like you want a sort of better idea of where the town stands. Hearing from the community that they feel like they didn't get their voice heard. And I'm wondering, do we want to amend the motion? Do we want to add another motion if we're going to do this town meeting to actually ask people in a clear way what exactly does the town want before we, it's sort of like step one, what does the town want a school? Does the town want one school? Step three, are you willing to put the money behind it? Because I feel like to some extent, I think sounds like when I listen to town, they feel like the car went before the horse. And there seems to be so much confusion, at least in the community, as to how we've gotten to this process, and again, how we're asking for another $250,000. So I guess my question would be back to the boards, are you asking the town for their opinions in this next town meeting or not? I'm not sure exactly what I'm hearing from the two boards.
The language for the article to be presented to the town meeting has not been decided finally, but the draft that I see said the town will vote to borrow or transfer from available funds a sum of $250,000, greater or lesser sum to be expended under the direction of the school building committee for the purpose of funding the additional costs to revise and complete the schematic design phase for relocating the Ipswich Elementary School project to the Doyon School site or take any other action there too. If the town votes that by 2/3 and prepared to follow whatever else is needed by a secret ballot, I think that then becomes the town's position. And I think that that's what people need to understand. I also am sympathetic to the number of people that have been in touch with me in the last few days saying it would tear me apart to vote against schools for kids. I don't think this proposal is what I want, but I have no idea what the consequence is. Does it just mean we will not do anything for elementary kids if this fails? Or is there what's the fallback? What happens if it doesn't pass? some people have asked that, whether they believe they want it at Doyen or not, so what's the, we would put this on the line, take it to town meeting, either nobody shows up or we don't get a vote, what's the consequence? And to be honest with you, I'm still not clear on what that is. I don't know what Plan B is exactly, but...
So, Bill, I just wanted to clarify something you said, because you talked about a two-thirds vote. This article being proposed for town meeting does not require two-thirds.
No, I'm jumping ahead on all of these things, but the consequences...
Everybody understood that you were talking about a subsequent vote.
Yes.
When you appropriate. And actually, that was kind of the point I wanted to make. I don't see us really getting any closer to consensus than we've been all along, and I'd actually like to suggest that we consider putting the project in its full development out to a town meeting vote and go to the ballot and just stop wasting time and money. We know what it's going to cost and we know where the school committee wants to put it. Let's just have the vote and get it over and done with. Just put it out there for Doyen for $65 million and let people vote it up or down. And then we can move on and then we know where we're going. Right now, you're going to spend another $250,000 it's 100% our money. We're not going to get any reimbursement for it. And we're going to spend another 5 months, and then we're going to go to a town meeting in the fall, and then we'll find out what the town really thinks. But it will be the same proposal that we're talking about tonight. So why don't we just go right to the proposal on Doyen and figure out a way to get it out there to the town and have a vote and decide if that's where we're going, great. And if it's not,
I've always seen the role of whoever chairs the tri-board meeting as a neutral force just to keep things moving and stay more or less on target so we get out of here by a certain time. I must say I am always impressed, however, with what Mr. Fay has to offer. I think that's not a bad idea. I'm going to take two people who've been standing in line for the longest time and give them a chance to comment first.
It's not a comment, it's a question. Mark Allman, High Street. We've been told that reconfiguration is not an option. Is there an opportunity for the public to see where in the MSBA regulations, emails, or letters that they explicitly state that reconfiguration will boot us out of the system? I would like to see what they say before we say that we can't revisit reconfiguration. Because if you're going to go to town meeting and ask for a vote, I'd like to know the viability of a two-school solution.
Okay, I'm not going to ask for it tonight, but I'm going to ask, is it conceptually possible to produce that? Is there statutory setup that would clarify that? Okay.
We'll get something.
Please identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gary Champion, 3 Palomino Way, and I think it's important to say that I've been deeply involved with this for a long, long time, as everybody here would, I think, acknowledge. The 2014 town meeting vote on this, if you go back to the ICAM video and watch it, you will see that the town meeting, the people there were adamant we must consider Doyen and Winthrop. And with assurances from town officials that that's what would take place, the funding was approved. And it came to be that the MSBA also agreed that's available to us. And then following great deal of research with professional advice, teachers, facts, the school committee decided the single elementary school was the best solution for Ipswich. And they revisited that question 3 times in total, voting for the single community elementary school to ensure that we had the equal educational experience for all our kids. Even if it was possible, even if Kevin said, oh, I found a way, we can go back to 2 schools, you would then need to revisit the class configuration, because it was one of the considerations. I hope the school committee backs me up on this. They said if we're going to keep 2 separate schools and we're going to build a new one, and it could be Winthrop, or maybe we should build the new school at Doyen. That's yet to be determined, in my opinion. But let's just say we put a new school at Winthrop. The concept was to maintain that equal educational experience, that you change the configurations. It would be, I believe, K to 3 at Winthrop and grades 5 and 6 at Doyon. That's the only way to be fair to every student, every parent in our community. So if you're a fan of Winthrop, your kid is going to be going to Doyon at some point in time anyway. Would that be an accurate statement? If we were to have two schools, it would have to be a split configuration?
We would not include grade 6, as you just mentioned. It'd only go as high as grade 5.
I'm sorry,
4 or 5.
K to 3 and then 4 to 5.
Correct.
Two different schools.
We never decided that. We never voted on that either way.
It was in the consideration.
So a dozen years ago...
Consideration, yes.
A dozen years ago, we considered just making that switch with the existing schools, and we had a year-long group that reviewed that, and the overwhelming educational consensus was against changes in venue during a child's elementary education. And that changed my mind, the transition piece, when I was in favor of that whole change configuration. So that probably would not pass muster, I don't think, at the end of the day. Maybe it's a different opinion, but we never voted on that.
Exactly. So the point is, even if folks won the argument, and we went back to two schools, you have to realize it's very likely going to be K to 3 and then 4 to 5 is going to be split, and educators tell us that's not...
I didn't hear that, but maybe that's what you think.
All right. Bear in mind that is a possibility. I'll leave it at that. Public support. We've had 3 town meetings now with great public support for this project. You can't just ignore the votes that have taken place, single school, the votes for the site, there's been 3 meetings that have voted in favor of the project. The town ballot, question 2 asked for site reviews, so there were 1,962 people that voted on site reviews. To me, that says there of 2,050, that tells me support for the schools, so the project. So there is a great deal of support. Clearly, there was not enough support for Winthrop, and I think the general consensus is, and the reason the school committee changed their opinion on that is it would fail. A single school at Winthrop would fail. Lilac requires lawful change of use and it has great public objection. It's a huge hurdle. To accomplish that, it would likely fail. Doyon is the only option available to us. It is a school site. It provides all the space we need, and it has great public support. So a single community school at Doyon is what we have right here, right now, to build one of the best schools in New England for our kids. I urge the selectmen to move forward with a motion to get the funds for this at a special town meeting in June, and think about the kids more than anything. As well, if the school did move and was built at Doyon, Winthrop could become a more financial advantage to the town. The entrance to the school could remain so that parents that like to walk their kids can walk them to the building, and the kids get onto a bus. You lose nothing. And then you could also have a van there that could transport people that don't have cars to and from the Doyon site. I think it's a winner, and I thank you for the time.
Okay, we've heard your case. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to stop the general discussion, which I believe, in deference to my successor, falls under the heading of discussion. And we have been discussing a potential June special town meeting. I think we are perhaps haggling over the language and what it is that would likely be proposed at that time. So we have 2 decisions before us. If we're going to do it, what are we going to bring to the town? Until Mr. Fay suggested, let's go for the whole ball of wax and finally wrap this up and figure out where the town is. I have one niggling concern about that, and that is if we do it in a hurry at the first part of June, that perhaps we have done it in a way that a significant number of voters will feel that once again they've been hustled out of the decision. But that would be the third point that I would want to make. Are we going to do it? What's it going to say? And if we decide to go for everything at this town meeting and finally come up with a decision and solve once and for all what the town wants, is this the best time to do it?
So if I could, I think the likelihood is if you go for a town meeting in early June or mid-June, and you have an article for $250,000, you will get a handful of citizen petitions at the same time that will try to put the issues you've heard about tonight back on the table, and we'll be in the same position of sort of debating, amending, and confusing everybody. So.
And to be clear, those citizen petitions would need 100 signatures for a special town meeting, not just the usual 10.
Let's assume that they can get 100, right? And so I think that's a real risk of going forward under what the initial proposal was here. So I agree with you. If you're going to go for a vote on the full project, I think you have to, in deference to everybody, put it out there far enough that people have time to really think about it and plan and do a little campaigning and do all that stuff. So maybe it's not mid-June, but maybe it's a little bit further out than that. I just don't see us, ever resolving this issue about what we're going to do until we have the vote on the full project. And the vote on the $250,000 doesn't resolve anything. It's not 2/3, it's not enough money, it's not going to bring people out, and it doesn't go to the ballot box. So I don't think that tells us anything about where the town's going to go in the fall. And, if that's when so I'm just suggesting, take that meeting in the fall, and let's move it up front. Instead of spending all this time and money, let's just go right to the vote. We know how much it's going to cost, put it out there, and then we know where we're going, and we can do our Plan A or Plan B, depending on what happens.
Mr. Whitmore.
Okay, I respectfully, strongly disagree with Mr. Fay. I just campaigned for the last month and a half, and the number one thing I heard is that the town does not do a good enough job of communicating what's going on. And we're going to ask people to vote on a $65 million school that they don't know what it looks like, because we're not going to have drawings or layouts. We're talking $65 million, not a $3 million override. There will be no time for anyone to make any effort to educate anybody on what's going on. I think that if we rush this, it's just sure to fail. And I think it would be a big mistake to rush a decision this big. I think even people who want to get this over with would be disappointed that we said, here's 3 weeks or here's a month to figure out a decision like this. So I would strongly oppose that.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree just for timing reasons. I think it's just the time to vote on something that big is just too short.
Yeah.
I do think there's, you're right probably, Jamie, that we will have citizens come out and propose something. And I think 100 signatures, by the way, is a very low bar. We probably have that number right here tonight. So we might have that, but I think it's our responsibility to sort of say what's the best option. And I think often in this process we haven't done that. And I think in this case, from what I've heard in the debate tonight, it's setting a special town meeting, having it be for incremental funding, and for sure that debate will happen at town meeting. I just don't want to be guilty of once again, as a collective body, the three committees, of saying there's not enough information, and if somebody wants to bring it up and argue that they have plenty of information to vote on $65 million project, so be it. I actually feel that way myself personally, that I could make a rational decision on that myself, but I think I have a responsibility not to put that up in such a short time period.
No, that's why I said I'd be interested in what you think a reasonable time frame is, because I just. With due respect, I don't think people are going to make the decision. They don't need to look at a floor plan to make this decision. They're going to look at what it costs, what it means for their taxes, and where it is. And there's been a lot of debate for 3 years about this, and I just think we're better off getting to the decision point quickly, whatever the date is, rather than stringing it out and spending more money.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to respond, Sarah Player, School Committee. My concern is the 250 would give us more information on the Doyon site as a feasibility study. It gives us information that we don't have right now on that site, and I think the townspeople and taxpayers are going to want to know more of those details before they move forward on a project. So I would agree with my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen that I would like to see that 250 supported by the town at a town meeting so that we could get more information on the Doyon site.
Yes.
Commissioner of the School Building Committee, I understand Mr. Fay's proposal there, but again, it would have to be a non-binding vote because MSBA doesn't allow us to vote until after their board has reviewed all of our schematic design and voted on, and then moves on to town meeting for a formal vote. And that would be great. Again, it was a non-binding, vote, but it's not going any further than that.
So can you clarify that?
Non-binding vote, which was for one school.
So can you just clarify what you said? You're saying the school building authority will not allow us to take a vote to bond a school?
Well, they won't not allow us, but they would prefer that we don't.
So I think the difference is important, and I'm glad that you said that, Kevin, because you and I corresponded on that very point earlier today. So we have the authority to go ahead and issue a bond in the full amount of the school and approve the project. Whether we get reimbursed for it will be up to SBA to vote whenever their schedule provides for that.
Yeah, what it comes down to is that some communities have done it, Somerville had done it recently, where they chose to vote at the November elections, because obviously it was a presidential year, they were expecting a big turnout, and they thought that was the best way of doing it. MSBA prefers that it's not done because what occurs is there's a form called a 3011, which documents the cost of the project, and most importantly, it puts in there, obviously, the total cost of the project, which we only have estimates. We don't have anything clear on what those numbers are, but more importantly, it says what the MSBA's reimbursement is going to be and what the cost of the town is going to be. So doing this, what you risk is if that we were to over or underestimate what the MSBA's, overestimate what the MSBA's thing would be, we could get sticker shock and would have to re-vote again because we were short on the bonding.
The vote doesn't say anything about what the amount of the reimbursement is. The vote is the authorization for the full amount of the bond.
Yeah, but we may be off on the full amount of the bond and how much, because again, we're bonding.
You've been looking at it for 3 years. I would trust your judgment on what the right number is.
But we're not bonding the full amount. We'd be bonding the part that we owe.
No.
MSBA is paying it as...
We have to borrow the entire amount, right?
No, we don't now, I don't think. The school reimbursement, that we don't appropriate the full amount, we only appropriate now the amount.
Appropriate a bond.
We appropriate the full amount, but we only bond the net
Yes.
amount.
Yeah, but the appropriation has to be pretty close to what we expect the total amount to be.
Correct.
Yes.
Because they've changed that in the last few years.
Right, we used to, they had two plans. One was they would pay the debt, and now they reimburse, as Kevin mentioned, the actual cost. They go through all the costs and all the invoices, and they pay their portion, and then we borrow the difference.
In case you don't know, that's Sarah Johnson, the town's Director of Finance.
Yes. Okay, I'm still unclear in my mind, how shall we proceed collectively? Some guidance to the chair. I think we, first of all, have to decide, are we going to impose ourselves on the voters in the short term for a special town meeting? What's the language of it going to be? And I think in fairness to everyone, how are we going to communicate, explain, educate, or whatever else that would help us to meet again after a town meeting like that and be able to say we did the best we could in terms of educating the town about the important issues that were being discussed.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a timing issue?
Certainly.
It's my understanding from just doing the math that we would need to, if we wanted to have a special town meeting, we'd need to sign the warrant before June 1st. And I think that's part of the reason, if you look at the information in front of you, my fellow selectmen, that's why the manager created sort of a warrant, so that we could be ready tonight to sign it. And that the proposed date, meaning one of the best dates where the Performing Arts Center was available, I think was the 19th.
June 19th.
June 19th. So I think we should do that. I think we should sign the warrant for a special town meeting and warn it for June 19th. I'm certain that the warrant article that's proposed was probably, well, I shouldn't say I'm certain. I'm only certain of a few things, and that's not one of them. But it would be my sense that we'll have at least one citizen's petition, and hopefully only one really well-worded citizens petition, not like that debacle we had at the last town meeting. So it's my hope that we do that, and we do it in the next 5 minutes, and let's move on. Let's get this meeting on the books. I think the school committee and the school building committee have made a good argument why we should at least have this debate on the $250,000. I support that idea. I'm sure other issues will surface, as they have in the 2 hours we've been talking about whether we should have a special town meeting or not. So I make that motion that we warn a special town meeting for June 19th at 7 p.m.
Chairman, I'd like to...
There's a motion on the floor, Mr. Chairman.
And we're waiting a second.
Could I ask a question about?
Let's get a second for that.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we warrant a special town meeting for June 19th.
Yes. Can I ask a question?
Under discussion. I'll accept the member's question and then the town manager's.
I just want some clarity on that. We're warning a special town meeting, but...
Oh, well. Ladies first, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you get to wait longer than me. Go ahead.
I'm fretting about the timing.
Yeah, your question is better than mine.
It is. Go ahead. And who said we didn't get along?
So your intent is to warn the town meeting and then have the board convene next week to sign the warrant, or to sign the warrant as presented tonight?
I would have my motion sign the warrant as presented tonight. My motion should reflect that, and that was my intention. But you might want to check with the seconder to make sure that the seconder is comfortable with that, so my motion doesn't fail for lack of a second.
I'm comfortable with the motion.
Your second is comfortable with the motion.
So it would be the article that we warn and sign the warrant tonight for $250,000. Yes, thank you.
My question was, do we want to get feedback from them?
I certainly do.
Okay.
I mean, we have a motion on the floor. The selectmen, I believe, have primacy in terms of this particular activity, but I would hope my colleagues would both listen and be open to any comments from the Finance Committee and the School Committee, and maybe 1 or 2 members of the audience, if I get around that, to that. Any comments from the Finance Committee?
Yeah, I guess my question would be to the school committee. Should we go to town meeting and this article fail, and we're going to revert back to the Winthrop project, will you see that as binding for your vote, or will you continue with Doyon as a choice?
I don't think we're prepared to answer that question tonight, Rob. Certainly would lead to a very difficult discussion. I mean, I think it goes back, we've answered a few questions tonight in the hypothetical. I don't know. I wouldn't want to venture a guess at this point. I also would like to ask if we could, Mr. Rosh, or if you could, what we received from the town manager, there are 2 possible motions. I was just curious as to which one.
The $250,000 motion. Oh, I see.
There's 2 of them.
Sources of funds.
The source of the funds is not specified. The recommendation would be to transfer from the stabilization fund. That would be my recommendation. Otherwise, if we borrow, it will reduce our available funds in the general fund.
Yeah, sorry, I was
How much
just
free
reading.
cash do we have?
We have about $200,000 in free cash.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Mr. White's comment about thinking about alternatives, and it's my sense from hearing the school committee, each and every one of them, by the way, that they've said that they're willing to give that thought, maybe not tonight, but that they would come, if at all possible, armed with the town meeting, prepared to have that discussion, as I think they're forewarned tonight, that those questions will arise, what should happen, what's your plan B? So I'm confident in my colleagues on the school committee that although maybe not prepared tonight because they haven't had time, frankly, to discuss those items, that they'll be good and ready by June 19th.
Further comment from the school committee?
Just that we're prepared to move forward with the request for $250,000 for the further study of the Doyon site. Appreciate the support of the other boards to make that happen.
Like I said earlier, when Ed asked, we have a great deal of conversation to have between now and the 19th. There was a suggestion made at last week's school committee meeting to possibly take Winthrop off from further consideration. We chose not to do that, so Winthrop remains a viable site at this point. So we will have hopefully Plan B, C, D, and E by the time that our meeting comes around. Bottom line is we want a new school for our children. Bottom line. That's what we want.
That's what we need.
And I would go much further, but I choose not to at this point, based on some of the things that have transpired this evening. I'll save that for another time.
With the motion, Walter Hartford, Finance Committee. With the motion as it's written, it seems like it gives you the chance to use the $250,000. If Winthrop is still on the table, does this motion allow for the $25,000 if that were to be Plan B?
That's a good question. Well, this is the article which would be on the warrant. Exactly what the motion would be. Let me see what the... I have some other town meeting experts here in the audience, so if you'll take a look at that. You all have a copy of this?
It didn't seem that way to me.
I was going to ask if we could we make a second motion so we have one article, but we have a second motion that basically says that we would agree to spend $25,000 to build at the Winthrop site.
Look, if really you got to the point where this was defeated and you wanted another $25,000, the school committee would come up with it out of the budget. You don't need to
I thought
appropriate.
that was the situation and why it's not in the motion.
We shouldn't let that sidetrack.
Okay, fair.
I don't think the way this I don't think it would fall within the four corners. I think you're either going to spend it for the large school at Doyen, or if it gets defeated, then that's no longer an issue. My sense was the school committee could figure out how to come up with $25,000 or $30,000 if you really had to.
That was the intention.
And not necessarily with a guarantee for reimbursement.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. It's been a productive evening, and it is clear to me that the forthcoming vote at town meeting, perhaps the ballot, that not everybody's going to get what they want. Some of us are going to be displeased with this, the outcome. We want one side, we want another side. I just wanted to echo an earlier comment that I think the fundamental goal here is to get a new school for these kids. We have two inferior schools. It's our obligation and I think our commitment to the future to make sure that we build a modern, suitable school for our school children. And I would ask, I prefer Project Bionic Park, frankly, but I, without hesitation, will rise above my preference to support the school at Doyen. And if that seems to be what the outcome of this process is drifting toward, I would ask all of the townspeople in their votes at town meeting and afterwards to consider what is best for the town and for our schools, and to act accordingly. And in my judgment, that's to support a new school, regardless of its site.
Other comments?
I just have one question. It was probably asked already, but I want to be sure when we go to town meeting, if we're borrowing or transferring.
We're transferring from the stabilization fund is the suggestion from the manager.
Right now, it is called available funds, which could be, depending on the way the motion is presented, could be a variety of sources. You believe the stabilization fund, which is quite substantial at the present time, could be used for that purpose. It would require two-thirds vote to
Either would
appropriate.
require two-thirds vote. borrowing or the transfer, but I will recommend a transfer from the stabilization fund.
The time frame for borrowing is very short. I would have to be 30 to make sure we had, if the design funds, depending on how they use the money, you can't have a deficit in the fund at June 30. And State House notes you can borrow in a short amount of time, but I don't know if 11 days is enough time.
It's not enough time.
Yeah.
No. And actually, even the amount would call into question the need to borrow, or to bond. So as long as the stabilization fund is the size that it is, and this is considered a sufficiently appropriate purpose for the stabilization fund.
Yeah, it meets all the...
Can I ask a clarifying question? Is it really required 2/3 vote simply to borrow?
Yes.
Of any amount?
Yes.
I'm not as clear on that, but if you want to get a ban, maybe.
Indebtedness requires a 2/3.
She's asking Siri, and we're in trouble.
This is why we have an expert in the audience, yes. Okay.
She never answers my questions, so don't count on her.
I have one more comment I think I want to speak in before we vote. So we've been talking tonight about Plan A, B, or C, and D if it fails. I want to briefly mention that there's a lot of concern out here for what happens if it passes. And I think that's real, and I think it's justified. I am that Winthrop parent. I will have a kid who will be attending the new school. I'm one of those walkable people. And looking at the process so far, they proposed a school at Violet Park, and it was controversial and kind of ran away from it. And we proposed a school at Winthrop, and it was controversial, and we kind of ran away from it. And now we're going to propose a school at Doyon. I don't want to just run away from the concerns of the Winthrop parents and the Winthrop families and the impacts that shifting the schools outside of town will have. As a group together, we need to address the problem that we're going to create by shifting a school outside of town. I know this is preliminary, we don't know what's going to pass, but I want to keep that on the forefront of everybody's radar. We have issues, there's families that don't have vehicles that will be completely reliant on buses to get to and from school. Businesses will get less traffic, have fewer customers. We need to be mindful on how we, if the school leaves, how we utilize that space. So I believe all these challenges are doable, but I want to keep them on the forefront so that we do recognize what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, I'm unclear what the rationale is for the school committee deciding to move the site from Winthrop to Doyon. My impression was that the rationale was the Winthrop site was not viable. I just heard Barry use the word viable in describing the Winthrop site. And I see on the document that we're going to be presenting them, but the Winthrop site is a viable option in continued difficulties with off-site parking and the scale of the building to the site. I've already spoken to parking. I think that should have been sent back to us for coming up with a solution. And as far as the scale of the building, the architects did a great job in designing a building that fit on that site. So I'm actually unclear now what the basis of the school committee's decision was to move from the in-town location that they had originally required, and what they're going to say to town meeting about why they're supporting Doyon. And I don't know if you want to speak to that now or not, but that's my question.
I don't know what's in that bottle. Anyway, I think last Thursday, when we voted, I think I can honestly say that I was one of the strongest proponents for an in-town school from day one, and I cited all the reasons why that was the case. But I think I mentioned last Thursday when we voted to move preferred site to Doyon was that my overriding feeling is that
my desire, my hope for a new community, one community school for all of our elementary school children supersedes site at this point. I love the thoughts of putting a new school at Violet, but that wasn't to be. You know how immersed we've been in dealing with the challenges of the Winthrop site. We joked last week about me meeting with the Reverend over at the Ascension Church and going in there and saying, you know, Reverend, if you could be so kind as we need 70 slots for off-site parking for the Winthrop school, the new school at Winthrop. He said, I can give you 7. So it didn't come close to solving that problem. I wasn't keen on paving out here, taking up ball fields. It reached a point for me that for every hurdle that I think we had cleared, there were 2 or 3 that were coming up as a result. There were questions that remained that were out there that I didn't feel comfortable with possible solutions. I'm also very, very keenly aware of the timing of this. I think this is a tremendous opportunity that doesn't come around very often. I've been involved in building projects in Newburyport in the past, and I can see what a successful building project can result in, brand new elementary school and major renovations to my middle school. But it also took a 100% community effort to get behind that to make it happen. And each meeting that we went to, whether it be the SBC, whether it be tri-board, whether it be school committee, there was just countless pushback that reached the point where, like I said, I want a new school, and it superseded, it overrode any decision oversight.
So I'm not clear what they were other than the parking, because my impression from watching the architects work and make repeated presentations to the school building committee is that they successfully resolved the traffic and all the other considerations, the concerns that we had, and that was the consensus of the committee. The parking was the only thing that was...
That was debatable. That's your impression of that. Yeah, my impression was that it remained debatable, that those challenges were resolved. I wasn't totally impressed. I won't say impressed. I think you did a tremendous amount of work. I wasn't convinced that the traffic issue had been addressed successfully. The parking was a real issue for me. It remains a real issue for me. The sizing of the building itself, even though it was a beautiful design, and to Michael's point earlier, just to be perfectly clear, the education program that the educators, the administrators, and the teachers wrote actually designed the building, which is remarkable, and people need to know that. But there were just too many issues that, in my own way of thinking, remained unsolved. And to get the sense of what people were saying at these meetings, I didn't agree with everything that was brought up. I still don't agree with some of the things that have been raised tonight, because I think, again, it's another example of lack of information. But I just thought it was time to make that difficult decision.
I think it poses, this in-town versus not is going to be one of the defining factors in this decision-making, and so I think that's going to...
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. At some personal risk, I'm going to set aside 6 minutes, 2 apiece, for the next 3 people standing by the microphone.
Marcia Gray, 3 Beechwood Road. I have a question. It might be followed by a comment, but I appreciate that the educational plan is remarkable and that it essentially built the school, but can the 3 boards guarantee us that the school budget is going to be able to support it? And I ask that because it, to me, seems like it is a critical point in a lot of the decision-making, whether or not we can go to 2 schools, why we went to 1 school, why we're going out to Doyon. And if all of this comes about, and you're telling me that our children are that they're in a state-of-the-art building, but we can't fund the curriculum, you're going to have the entire parent community in here. Because that's all we really need at the end of the day, right, is to be able to educate our children. And what I don't seem to be hearing from anyone is the plan to put that in place. And yet it's being held up as the reason for one school, the reason for $250,000 more, and to fund the Doyon redesign or design. So and why we can't revisit a two-school option. So can the three boards guarantee me that this educational plan that everyone seems to be saying is so wonderful will definitely be funded?
That's our intent. It's the reason why we've created the stabilization fund to extend the life of the override, at which we continue to make major contributions on a regular basis to. It's one of the reasons why I asked tonight about if we have to come up with $250,000 out of choice, I would insist that it be reimbursed so that we can continue to put money towards that stabilization fund. We're going to continue to fund the schools to the extent that we can, and the town deserves a great deal of credit, because rarely have they questioned our requests, and the boards are usually unanimous in our request for what the schools need to make it happen.
But my understanding of the override was that it was keeping us intact. It was not offering additional improvements to the curriculum. It was
But that's not true, Marcia.
backfilling cuts.
Look at the improvements that have been made in the last 2 years alone that we continue to fund.
Well, I hope that continues.
At all levels. At all levels.
And we don't think that okay. I mean, I don't want to shoot us in the foot here, but I am very worried about the historical performance in the town is to vote against taxes to go towards the schools. And I do believe that while there was a large majority of people pushing that to Doyon, it was just to get it not at Bialek. And I don't think it's going to pass for Doyon because of the large number that's being associated with it. You had an entire parent community that bonded together to get the overrides passed. And you're not going to have that for the school because so many of us compromised on one school when we were told that Bialek was a real option. When Bialek, and so many of us felt duped and divided when Bialek suddenly got removed from the table. So I think I want to be clear here because I fought really hard for those overrides, and I believe in education, and I believe in a new school, and I want to believe in equity for all. But equity doesn't always come from things being the same, and we haven't had the same in this town ever. So I just, again,
I agree with everything you said.
I want curriculum for my kids.
I agree with everything you said.
And for all the kids coming behind us.
But the intent of the override was not one and done. We weren't, we didn't take the funds that we were able to get through the override.
But Barry, that's my point. It's not one and done. And we are now asking the town for $250.
That's what I was just saying.
I know, and we also know from educating the town on the override, there's a lot of confusion about where money pulls from. So we keep talking about this amazing educational plan that's building this school, and our townspeople are going to come to the polls, and they're going to think that the money that's building the school is funding the educational plan. It's going to be the misperception, because that's a lot of what had to be educated during the override.
The other piece, too, just one last comment, is that, as I said the other night, the override benefited all students in the Ipswich Public Schools, not just the elementary school students. So that's the additional challenge that we're facing as well.
I agree.
Okay. Excellent comments. I promise 2 more people, and please keep it to the 2 minutes.
Hi, Michelle Hunton, Turkey Shore Road. I just wanted to try to give a different perspective. I haven't heard someone speak from kind of my circle of friends in Ipswich. I have a 2-year-old daughter. She'll probably be one of the first students attending the new school, and I know a lot of other parents who do as well and who are in favor of a downtown school. My question is sort of long-term planning, similar to the prior speaker. I'm concerned about, there's clearly division in this town about whether a site at Doyon would be approved and whether the residents agree with that. I'm concerned about whether all of this divisiveness in town will affect a future override that we may need 2 or 3 years down the line, because I mean, a new school will directly affect my daughter, and yeah, it would be great to have a shiny new building, but when it comes down to it, I'm not concerned about her education if it's in an old building. I'm more concerned if teachers will get cut and funding will get cut. A few years ago when there was the issue of the override, that really concerned me. And, I'm just concerned that all this divisiveness might affect, future overrides that actually will, directly affect children. And I know a lot of others who have children who will be starting school in a few years at this new elementary school aren't really as concerned with an old building. Another just quick thing I wanted to address, obviously everyone's discussed walkability, so I don't want to get into that again. I feel strongly about that. I moved to Ipswich, and specifically, my husband and I purchased a house that's walkable to the downtown because that was important to us. But the other issue is accessibility. Ipswich is a huge town geographically, and right now, the center of town, the downtown area, is pretty central to the town. And I know it may seem like another 5 or 10 minutes bus ride, 5 or 10 minute drive to Doyon for current Winthrop students isn't a lot, but when you have 2 full-time working parents, such as my family and most others I know, you're on a train schedule like I am, another 5 or 10 minutes on either end of the commute is huge. That's another, 20 to 30 minutes that your child's on a bus. It's another half an hour of the day you're not seeing your child, that you only see 3 hours a day. So it really does have a huge effect on the day-to-day life of students. The other quick question I just had is, you had mentioned a citizen's petition that was possible for the June town meeting. I was wondering if there's a deadline for that people should be aware of, if people were to go forward with it.
If the warrant gets signed tonight, it will be posted tomorrow, and that will be the entire content of the special town meeting. In other words, once a warrant's been posted, we don't add to it.
Okay, I thought I heard before that there was the possibility of a citizen's petition. I was just kind of confused.
No, you can't. Once it gets posted, you can't add it.
I have a notice from Tom Murphy about this. I asked him about this. This is from Tom Murphy. A week. Once a warrant is open, they've got 3 days' notice that they're going to open the warrant. It must stay open for 7 days, and they got to post it 14 days before a special town meeting.
I've got the bylaw here, and I'll read it. The selectmen shall give at least 3 calendar days' notice of their intention to open a warrant for a special town meeting by publication in a newspaper published in or having general circulation in the town of Ipswich, unless in their judgment public interest would suffer by such a delay. So the statutes are very different from the bylaws. So if the board directs that this needs to go be handled forthwith, then it is up to them.
So 14 days from the 19th would bring us to the 5th, right?
14 business days?
What are you talking about?
Wasn't it 14 days that would
Yes, we have
close,
to. Yes,
close within 14 days?
But we need to post it by next, because it's a Monday. The 19th is a Monday. We would have to post it by Thursday of June 1st. So we will not make the 3 calendar days notice by publication in newspaper because of the publication deadlines. We won't make that. But the statute only requires, and we've had town council opine on this, the statute requires only that there be that the warrant be posted. Actually, it's 15 days before the date of town meeting.
So what date on the calendar would give us ample time to have a full open and closed warrant? With ample time to
We
warrant?
won't get it posted in the papers.
Doesn't matter. I don't care about what room is available. The room will have to become available. We'll pick a date, and if that doesn't work, then
What do you mean? You'll have to be, if the room's not available?
we'll have to get the Performing Arts Center will have to be available. We'll have to find an alternative location.
If it's, the 19th is...
The only date you gave us was the one date it's available. I find that hard to believe that it can only be available one day. It was my intent in making the motion that we give a relatively robust warning cycle for the town meeting, not to leave it open.
To leave what open?
Well, to leave the idea of a citizen's petition open. I think it would be unfair.
That's why I was asking you what your intent is, whether you intended as part of your motion to sign the warrant tonight. And the answer I got was yes, in which case it would be posted, but if you want to leave it open, I would say, Monday, because we have to...
Monday's a holiday, it would have
Well,
to be
then
Tuesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Tuesday or Wednesday, what?
Next week.
What would we do on Tuesday or Wednesday of next week? We would warn that we open the warrant on Tuesday?
No, you would sign the warrant.
So we open it now and sign it, close it, open it now and sign
Declare
it.
it open, and you would sign a warrant on Monday or Tuesday,
And citizen petitions,
Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
citizen petitions would be accepted until the time that it was signed?
Well, we have to insert them in the warrant, so we probably need some time to process that. Somebody has to be here to insert it all and
Certify the signatures, right?
certify the signatures, so probably by Tuesday, because the town clerk certifies the signatures, then we take that, we insert it in the warrant, and then you need to sign it.
And how are the citizens who are not here tonight going to believe that they haven't been hustled here as this thing? I mean, I'm beginning to get a kind of a negative feeling of the way this is laying out a little bit.
Listen,
Talk me into it here.
We're often dealt the hand of imperfect possibilities, right?
Yeah, but this is something that I think we're asking the town, ultimately, if they go for this $250,000, it really is pretty much the last shot in terms of where the school is going to be and how big it is. Now, everyone says maybe it's advisory and maybe it won't happen, but isn't that really
looking backwards, Kevin, so Kevin, before we even use this $250,000, you've got to spend the $145,000, right?
Yes, you have to do the PSR first.
So what's the rush? Why can't we do
The
this?
deadline?
Well, but you're not even going to start spending the $250,000 for another 8 weeks.
No, we would start spending, well, underneath alternative 2, we would start in July, after the 4th. If we were attempting to try to keep the November elections, you would be doing the PSR the month of June, and then July and August, you would be doing the schematic design.
I think the intent was also to do this before school is out and people go on vacation. So there's more opportunity for people to weigh in. I mean, people might say, well, we're pressing this, but we also want to get it done before school closes if we need the money in July. Is that correct, Kevin?
Correct.
Okay.
That was the idea. I'm sensitive to that idea, but that might not be the most important reason to hold a town meeting. I mean, I'm sensitive to that notion, but I don't think that's the reason. That reason to me doesn't take primacy. It's in my mind, the idea of a town meeting is to have a full cycle town meeting, meaning to have an opportunity for citizens petitions. On something like this, I think it's critical to have that cycle. Even if there are those special town meetings where it may not be as important, this one's a monster as far as an issue goes. So, I think it would really seem more, it would not be good for us just to sign the warrant tonight. I don't think we should do that. I think we should pick the date, the last date you need, have a full warrant cycle, and sign it at a later date and pick a different town meeting date than June 19th. I won't withdraw my motion because I like to amend it to a different date. And again, I don't want to, we have a couple of other items of business that we have to cover tonight, so I'd like to try to get there relatively soon.
Can I suggest that maybe the town look to see what other dates are available from the PAC and get back to the committees and see possibly maybe the 26th or 27th? Would that be enough time?
I don't know. I would say this selectman's a strong opinion that the next meeting we hold, if we're going to talk about a special town meeting, that, we all have busy schedules, I appreciate that, but that we not go hither and dither at that meeting, and that we talk about a special town meeting, pick a date, and say yes or no. I think it's if we need to make a motion tonight as a board that we want to have one article to do it so that we help people understand what we want to do at our next meeting, I'm happy to do that. And as I said earlier, I'm more than happy and welcome the debates on configurations and size and options. We need to have that debate. But we need to have that debate in the right form and properly warned. I want the next selectmen's meeting, if we're going to have a different meeting to pick a different town meeting, to be about that and not about the multiple ways that the school could be reconfigured. So I certainly look to my colleagues for their input, but if we're going to pick another meeting next week, let's not have it be a meeting like this. Let's have it be are we picking a special town meeting? And then we can have that subsequent meeting at a larger, more appropriate venue to have all these various robust debates with, maybe we can have visual aids, we can have the kinds of things we need, the data that people ask for which they want a clarification, all those sorts of things could be at a separate meeting.
I would point out that this was set in motion with the previous administration. Personally, I have found the discussion tonight to be helpful. It has been useful to me to hear reactions to what happened at the school committee meeting last week, and to help clarify in my mind what this is that we're really trying to accomplish. And Mr. Engel generally has insight into these things, so a couple of minutes from him I will permit.
Jim Engel, 362 Linebrook Road, and I might point out that with the exception of Kevin Murphy's house, everything is in town to me. This town meeting, special town meeting, can't come quick enough for me. I have witnessed this evening, over the past month, over the past months, the intractable positions that everybody has taken on this issue, and it doesn't get resolved. And so I would encourage the Board of Selectmen to schedule a special town meeting with the specific proposal that's been outlined. It's a single school, it's a $250,000 appropriation, and it can only be spent for the Doyon site. What does that do to everybody who wants to express their opinion? It gives them everything that they need. If you don't want to spend $65 million for a school, go to town meeting and vote this down. If you're in favor of a single school, regardless of the site, go to town meeting and vote in favor. If you are so concerned that Doyon is the wrong site, go to town meeting and vote it down. It's all there. And it finally gives the community an opportunity to say something as a body whole. And that is what is clearly needed. The school committee has requested a special town meeting. The school committee has said, single school, $250,000 Doyon. That's the request that's before the Board of Selectmen. And as Mr. Rascher points out, as we approach that special town meeting, we can have all of the arguments about whether a single school or two schools or an in-town school or a Doyon school or whatever. We can have all of those discussions. But the purpose of tonight's meeting, as I understood it and has been warned in the agenda, is to consider scheduling a special town meeting. I think that you should act on what the school committee has requested, schedule a meeting, and then get on with it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Item number 4, specifically discuss potential June special town meeting. I would say that we have been discussing potential June special town meeting. At this point, the maker of the motion seems to be wavering a bit as to the timing and what will be contained in that motion. Has that been clarified?
Yes, I'm sticking with my original motion.
Which is?
Schedule a meeting for June 19th, we'll sign the warrant tonight. I'd love to have a regular cycle, I don't think it'll work, and I do think that that we'll have plenty of debate on the points of all the school designs there, I'm sure we will. So I'm confident that will be a good representation of direction for the town, so my original motion stands.
Comment?
I'm going to let someone else go first now. I'm going to let someone else go first on this one.
All right. Being very experienced at citizens petitions, I really strongly would like to see the opportunity for, I'm in favor of Joy on School, as I said earlier, but I would like to see the opportunity for anybody that wants to bring a citizens petition to have that opportunity.
And I think that okay.
Question, citizens petitions are non-binding?
Oh, no, they would, if they get 100 signatures that are certified, it goes on the warrant.
Depends how they write it.
Okay, okay.
But people could amend the motion as well on town meeting floor.
Well, as we've discovered, we can apparently do almost anything on town meeting floor. But I think, and I think I agree with Mr. Rosher on this one, it would be nice to make it clear what it is that people are expected to deal with and what the consequences of dealing with it are going to be. And I think that's only fairness to the voters. And that's something that stepping aside from my role here tonight, I'm going to rag at you for about 2 minutes. I think that if we do this, preparing for a town meeting and carrying out a town meeting is certainly the legislative body coming together to think through and make decisions. Outside of that, it is also a certain amount of theater that reinforces certain things that I think we stand for, and the reason that we hold on to what some call an archaic form of government, sort of like our old houses. They're expensive to maintain. It's, to some extent, not the most efficient way to proceed, but the town meeting, I think, should give people who are being invited to come in and act as the legislature enough time to know what's going on. And part of that, what's going on, is the ability within some reasonable time to offer additional citizen petitions at that town meeting. And I'm not clear how this June 19th permits that, and that's, just explain that to me so I know what it is we are going to be offering the voters in terms of their participation in preparation for this town meeting. Will there be sufficient time for anyone who might like to participate by offering a petition? How will that be done? What will the deadlines be?
Yes, let me answer that question. If you read the warrant article, it has language that in our wisdom we always include, or take any other action there, I'll read it, or take any action relative thereto. An amendment to pick one, two schools solution is certainly relevant, it's germane. It's going to be up to Tom Murphy whether he agrees with that. And I hazard a guess that he would probably say yes. An amendment like that is within the four corners of this warrant article. So while a citizen's petition isn't viable in this scenario that we outlined, certainly citizen motions and amendments would be. And as we saw at the last town meeting, they really have a lot of power, don't they? I mean, we had several amendments that had us all our heads spinning, but in the end, I think we all knew what we were voting on, and a well-organized effort could really make a clear amendment, and that would be your opportunity.
The four corners of this are circumscribed by schematic design phase for relocating the Ipswich Elementary School project to the Doyen School site. That really is that's the big McGilla here. Or to take any other action there too. I would think it would be difficult to say we're going to take it somewhere else or do something different with that.
Sure. I won't debate it further. I'm not a parliamentarian. I'm not the town moderator. I've offered you my notion of what could happen. But to answer your question directly, this would remove, this current configuration meets the needs of hitting a deadline that I think is real. But it's a sacrifice in the sense that I think we'd all love to have the opportunity for a citizen's petition, and we'd have to sacrifice that opportunity in this particular configuration of specifically having a citizen's petition. It's not ideal. Took me a minute. No, but I'm certain. I have not seen one ideal thing happen in this entire process. So, we're not alone. We're not alone in...
So further less than ideal components are not outrageous.
It's not new territory for us in this process. So, my motion stands.
Hi, Avni Lair, School Board. I just had a question actually directed at Kevin. I think he can answer this. And I'm neither advocating for nor against the timing of the meeting. My understanding was that the timing of the meeting was because if we don't have it by that time, if we choose to go forward, we are adding $3 to $4 million. Is that correct? Or is it possible to advance the meeting a bit further out and still make the deadline? Not have to add that additional cost?
You mean move it out into July? Or further out that the thing here is that the goal of the June meeting was twofold. First of all, not during the summer, so it maximized attendance for people. People are not starting vacations because school's still in session. The second part of it was, yes, the goal was to try to have the town meeting to vote to fund the project in November. I guess now, the way we're talking, we'd be pushing it toward maybe December, but the goal was to have it early enough so that, because if we vote to approve this project to fund it, there's still 9 months of design left. We actually design the building. We haven't gotten to that point yet. So that takes about 9 months. So the goal would be is to try to have time that they can actually start construction in the fall. If we have a project where we go to town meeting in February and March, 9 months puts us into October, November. You don't start construction in the middle of winter when the ground's frozen. So that's where you lose the cycle and you start in the spring of 19. So what we're talking about tonight, clearly we're not, the SBC is not going to vote tonight to authorize the architect to start the PSR process for the Doyon site. I guess we kind of have to look at and see if, the alternative 3 option, what we can do to tighten up those numbers so that we can keep hopefully a December town meeting, but I don't know if that's possible.
Hey, Mr. Chair, I have a comment. If I could.
Yes.
So I just double-checked with the town manager. So something that I learned from Tom Murphy a while back is that citizens petitions can't compel any board to do anything. So they can't force anything. So in other words, if someone brought about a citizen's petition, say to build a small school at Winthrop, and to go back to the 2-school idea, that could pass with a lot of support, but then it doesn't force anybody to make any decisions from that.
Let him speak, Richard.
So I think we need to keep that in mind. So the way I'm leaning on this is, what I'm feeling from this is that we have a motion. This is, compared to a lot of motions, this to me seems fairly tight and specific. And I think that if it fails, I just see everything blowing up, regardless of whatever citizen's petition happens. To me, it doesn't make a difference. If this doesn't pass, there's no way it's going to pass in the fall. So if this doesn't pass in a month, then we're basically, in my mind, probably starting all over again. So it's going to be citizens petition versus citizens petition versus citizens petition, none of which I see the school committee necessarily having to act on right away. So in my mind, I'm leaning towards, supporting this idea of doing it without the citizens petitions, because I don't think it's going to bring anything that's really useful, to be honest.
Okay.
As as someone who's tried to amend the motion, Tom Murphy, to add the Winthrop School to the discussion of the last town meeting, I would have to disagree with Mr. Rauscher's description of the likelihood of the motion being amendable. So I think you are denying the public, you're denying yourselves the kind of feedback you may want from the town meeting besides just this bare issue. And I thought that the discussion prior to this, whether it was a definitive or just advice, something that you wanted to use the meeting for, and I think you're losing an opportunity, and I urge you to take that opportunity.
Okay. I think we have covered most of the ground at this point. As I understand it, we are voting on setting June 19th, a Monday night, for a special town meeting to deal with a motion to see if the town will vote to borrow or transfer from available funds the sum of $25,000 or a...
$50,000.
$250,000 or a greater or lesser sum to be expended under the direction of the school building committee for the purpose of funding the additional costs to revise and complete the schematic design phase for relocating the Ipswich Elementary School project to the Doyen School site or take any other action thereto. That would be the single article. If it were signed tonight, it would be opened and closed.
Right.
Point of order. I'm reading what Robin read earlier. You need to read the next paragraph, Robin.
Which says?
It says, selectmen shall give at least 3 calendar days notice of their intention to open a warrant for a special town meeting by publication in the newspaper.
I read that.
Right, exactly. Unless in their judgment, public interest should suffer by such delay. That's what you read. The next paragraph says, the warrant for a town meeting, once open, shall remain open for at least 7 calendar days. It has to remain open for 7 calendar days.
That says for town meeting. That doesn't say for special town meeting. They're in different sections. I mean, you know, we've got something here that says annual town meeting, special town meeting, and I can tell you that George Hall, Town Council, has opined on numerous occasions that the statutory requirements supersede this.
Mr. Chairman, just speaking to the point of order, I think it would be within bounds that if that the manager check tomorrow, and if closing the warrant was out of order, they could remain open.
The public would go. Second point of order.
By the way, I trust the manager's judgment on this, or I wouldn't have made the motion, but...
Second point of order, the property that is submitted to the state remains to be Winthrop property. Is that correct?
Pardon?
The property that was submitted to the state remains the Winthrop property. Correct?
Yes.
Mr. Rauscher remains a principal abutter to that property, which presents a conflict of interest. Any vote concerning this project while that property remains the one submitted to the state is a direct conflict of interest.
I don't opine on that. That is something to discuss with the Ethics Commission. We do not opine on that.
I'm going to proceed at this time to take a vote on this motion. There has been a point of order which has been raised and noted, and that may at some future date be a problem. But at this point, I think we are discussing a town meeting that has something to do with the Doyen property.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Point of order. I withdraw my motion.
I second that. Wait,
I withdraw my motion just so that there's no cloud on this vote.
so can I would like to make the motion to go ahead and move forward with setting the date. I didn't say it very nicely, but what about the seconder? He should speak in.
Mr. Matafian, how do you feel about that?
I second Mr. Rauscher's motion to withdraw.
No, Mr. Whitmore. He's withdrawn his. We have a new motion on the floor.
I'm not seconding his withdrawing of his motion.
No, you don't need to.
You don't need to, he's withdrawn it.
You just need to second Mr. Whitmore.
The chair has determined that he has withdrawn it.
I second Mr. Whitmore's motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded. It is essentially the same motion. By way of comment from my perspective on all of this, I think it will require all of the committees to speak frequently and often between now and the 19th, letting people know what's going on around here. If I were not at this meeting or not on the inside track, I would be concerned that something had happened that I might not have been fully informed of. I hope that the media will cover this fully. It is unfortunate that ICAM is down. The rushed nature of this, not necessarily whether it's legal or not, but the look and feel of it, I find upsetting as a citizen. That said, I am going to hearken back to Mr. Engel's comments. This is a chance for people to take action. If you don't like it at Doyen, vote it down. If it's too big, vote it down. If you can live with the consequences of it, support it. Because it would seem to me this action moves us so far down the road to preparation for one large school at Doyen, it would be hard to reverse direction at some future date based on all of the things I have heard regarding the school building assistance process. Would you agree with that?
Agreed.
So what we're really asking, even though it's not as specific as Mr. Fay had hoped, this is one of those fish or cut bait arrangements. In the last few days following the school committee meeting, the number of people who have contacted me on this issue has been, from my perspective, unusual. I always get phone calls on all kinds of things. People talk to me, they yell at me, they try to soothe me and convince me of things. This one has created the full range of reactions. And the overwhelming concern is that there are any number of people who don't like what's going on for any number of reasons. Not entirely trusting the process, not entirely happy with the way things have gone. All of them, however, and I've questioned each and as they've talked to me, underlying their concerns has been the general support for education, our young people, and providing them with the best facilities possible. So even those that are going to hold their nose and vote for something they don't want are doing it because underlying it is their commitment to young people. However, this is the first time I've heard people say, and it will pain me, it's going to cause me to lose sleep, but I may not be able to vote for this. So I think that this is not a slam dunk, and Mr. Engel has very nicely outlined the steps available to the voters at that special town meeting. It's incumbent on all of us, however, to make sure as many people are as well informed about what the issues are and the consequences. I am in my own mind still a little vague on Plan B. If this doesn't pass, where are we then? Is it that we no longer can count on state assistance and we will have to look to our own resources to deal with two schools that we all agree need investment to be up to any level of standard that we're comfortable with for young people? Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to call a question from the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to ask you to yell it out. Mr. Matafian, are you in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Alexson?
Yes.
2? 3?
Yes.
I'm in favor.
I abstain.
Yes, I have noted that. Okay. Thus ended that part of the meeting.
I do have a question.
Yes, by all means.
The warrant calls for recommendations. Typically, when warrants are posted, we put in recommendations. Are there any recommendations I can put in here, or are those going to be deferred to town meeting?
Well, I will ask the committees. We would like a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Is the Finance Committee prepared to make a recommendation at this time? We will be asking for a recommendation from the School Committee. Are you prepared to make a recommendation at this time?
We are.
You are? And?
Yeah, we are. 5-0 in favor.
5-0 in favor. Finance Committee?
It won't be part of the both.
I think we should.
Finance Committee, we have a meeting June 13th. We can vote it then. Or we can vote it now.
I would prefer to vote it now.
Vote it now. Motion?
I move to take a vote to support Article 1.
Second. Second. All in favor?
So I was thinking we would have some conversation with the board and the town manager regarding the source of funds, regarding free cash or the stabilization fund. What's the right blend of funds? But we don't have a motion. Is that firm in the?
It just says to borrow or transfer from available funds. I can put, to borrow, or I'll put the motion to actually transfer from
Stabilization transfers from free cash is the same.
I wasn't planning on...
Within that.
Somewhere, free cash or stabilization, we have 200, a little less under 200 left in free cash. So you want a combination?
I would prefer that, and that we discuss it on the 13th. The source, it's only the source I'm concerned about.
Well, the way it reads now, you can put in a blend of sources.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
Other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, your vote is?
What's the number? 8 to 1?
8-1.
To support the basic expenditures of $250,000. Okay? School Committee 5-0 to support that expenditure. Of the 4 people voting on the Board of Selectmen, what is your position?
We're missing one. Willie's not here.
You can add him later, in a minute, when he comes back from...
Support.
Support.
I'll abstain from that vote. I'll walk on the floor, like I did last time.
Okay, I'll find out what...
Okay, we'll catch up with him when he comes in. At this moment, I am not in favor of this, but I will continue to think between now and town meeting. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, but before we adjourn, if we could just cover one more item that's unrelated to this
I'm not ready
agenda.
to adjourn yet. We have some new business, brief new business, which is an application for a street or sidewalk blocking. Have you all seen this, or does it need to be?
Move we approve the request.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Or any other new business to come before the meeting tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I know that it's often we have a little bit more time before we reorganize vis-a-vis the committees, water, sewer, public safety, and I hope we'll do that with some thought. However, the electric subcommittee meets tomorrow night at 7 p.m., and it would be a timely moment to see if we can have an addition to our subcommittee. If it pleases my colleagues, I'd be willing to stay on that subcommittee, but we do need one other, as Mr. Sapitsky was the other selectman's representative on that subcommittee.
Okay, and generally, when we look at selectmen participation, we ask for volunteers. Is there anyone willing to volunteer for that assignment?
I would volunteer.
Mr. Whitmore? Mr. Whitmore has volunteered. I would move that we appoint Mr. Whitmore as the second representative on the Electric Light Advisory Committee.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
If he doesn't recommend.
Any other new business, old business to come before the meeting? Yes.
Oh, I just stepped out to use the restroom when you made it.
Would you like to be counted with regard to your motion?
Yeah, I'll support my motion.
You'll support it, okay?
To move to recommend. Okay, thank you.
You will move to recommend.
I thought they were voting, that's why I left real quick.
Okay? Yes.
I would like an update on...
I need you to sign black pen.
ICAM. I would like to find out what the problem is with ICAM.
Okay. Would you keep the noise down for just a little bit? We're going to transact a little bit of business here. You're welcome to do the same among your committees, but keep it quiet. The question is, do we have an update on ICAM? Madam Town Manager, do we know do we have an update on ICAM? We've come to rely on that, and it seems not to be working.
They thought possibly, I thought I heard possibly by, they said possibly by Wednesday, but that was...
But your sense is that it's imminent.
It was hacked. Oh. So it was outside of their control, but it was, something was hacked. That's all I know at this point.
Finance Committee.
I thought we sent something to you.
And I was asked about it on my way here, so, okay.
If we find out anything else, we'll send that out. So moved.
Discussion. So, we're going to talk to Cindy about warrant hearings, so our warrant hearing will be on the 13th.
Red pen.
It's not red.
And we'll post it as soon as possible. ICAM report.
Town clerk just doesn't want it to degrade.
Okay.
Let's think about that one.
They can try to amend it if they want to.
Distribute that. We're just going to...
But
So just one last quick thing before we maybe move to adjourn is I would just like to personally thank Mr. Rauscher for his last 12 months of his chairmanship. I thought he did a great job under some pretty trying circumstances, so I just wanted to thank him for the last 12 months.
I would second that. Thank you very much. And we continue to look to your continued leadership in so many areas. Thank you. Okay.
how about this? I move we adjourn.
You want... Okay.
I move
We adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I'm going to take one more question.
Point of order. There's a motion on the floor. You need to get a second first.
Second.
Our meeting is when?
Second to adjourn, or can I ask?
Well, I'm going to permit it under discussion.
It's a very
Go
good
ahead.
question. Elizabeth Harkness, Highland Ave. I have lots of questions. I'll be direct on this one just because I haven't heard it spoken to. If the school does go in at Doyon, are there any plans for widening the road or putting in decent sidewalks? And if so, have those costs been considered and have they been presented? I very much enjoy walking my kids to school at Winthrop right now. I'm hoping that, with that not being an option for most of the town, that children will be able to ride their bikes safely. And I'm wondering what the plan is for that, if anything, for Linebrook Road.
Okay, there is, you know, a plan for improvements on Linebrook, and you might be able to speak to sidewalks.
Yes, the sidewalks will be improved up there, and the road will be resurfaced, and
how does the
I think the real wrinkle is that we've been unsuccessful in getting a plan to get gas in that road. I mean, it would be this selectman's strong push to see if we could try again somehow to make the long-term maintenance of the building a little, not the maintenance, but get the fuel. If we could do that, I think we should try to move heaven and earth to do that before we put a final coat of pavement on them.
So is there a scenario where the school would be there and Linebrook wouldn't be addressed?
No, Linebrook's getting fixed.
Linebrook is already
in the works,
and the sidewalks are part of that plan.
construction will take place this spring.
Okay, excellent.
Whether or not there's a school there will be sidewalks.
Very good. Thank you for taking my question, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Already had that.
There is. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn?
Hey.
All right, thanks.